What's going on, everyone? Look out for the possible or the definite echo right here. Just got to check sound. What's going on, everyone? All right, cool. What is up? So, January of 2024 is out of the way already. This year is already flying by. We just knocked January out. I mean, it's crazy. And so, one thing I wanted to do, this is going to be the first time I've ever done this, and I'm pretty excited about it. And it's something I hope to do for the rest of the year, and that is a monthly recap of not just new releases, but other things as well. And if you're on YouTube and you're reading the description, you can see obviously Twitch. I mean, I'm just going to tell you. um, so I'm going to be going over first time. It's going to be first time watches for me, and then some rewatches as well. First time watches, I'm going to be doing series. This is the first time I've ever talked about series, is really. And then it's going to be doing, I'm going to be talking about rewatches of older films that I've seen before. And then I'm going to be talking about first time watches, which I had a lot more than I realized. I watch a lot of movies. And then I'm going to talk about new releases. I'm going to end it all with the January movies, and I'm going to be ranking and reviewing every new release that has come out from January 1st, January 31st. So let's just get it popping. I'm gonna kick things off with the I've never talked about a series on here, so this is kind of cool. And I definitely, after I finished, there's one on here that I finished. I started it and I finished it. It's only one season long, and because of that one, I said, yeah, I'm gonna have to add this to my channel in some way. I'm gonna have to start talking about series, and so I decided to do it here. Um, and so yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get it started. Whoa, let's bring that focus back. Let's bring that focus back in. Where we at? There we are. Camera's a little tipsy tonight. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to just jump right in, and I just want to kind of move through because I've got a lot to talk about here. And so yeah, we're gonna start with first time series watches. These are shows that I started within the month of January. And so I started a couple. And the first one I'm gonna talk about is Royal Pains. This is a show. It's about a an emergency room. He's a physician, and he this isn't a spoiler or anything. He gets fired for making a judgment call, and he falls into like a depression, and his brother decides, I need to get him out of his slump. So he's like, let's take a trip. And so he takes him on a trip, and during this trip, he stumbles across a very unique opportunity to be an on-call doctor where he does house calls. Really, it's fun. It's a fun show. It's a longer one. So I've knocked out season one, and I'm working on season two right now. But I did start it within the month of January, and it's fun so far. I don't remember who is in it, but it's a fun cast. And you get some pretty cool antics. The brother is absolutely the best part so far, and yeah, interesting show. Check it out on Prime. That's where I've been watching it. You can check it out on Prime if you haven't seen that one. Next up is, and I'm almost done with it. I'm almost done with this one, and that is Death Note, the anime. My brother actually knocked it out. He started it a few weeks ago, and he told me, he said, "Hey, you got to check this out. This is pretty cool." And I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." And so I started it, and I've been binging it for the past couple days, and I've almost finished it. There's 37 episodes, and I think I got 28 last night. And so I'll probably be binging it again tonight after I finish this live. But yeah, pretty cool. For anyone who doesn't know what it's about a kid who, there's a lot of lore, and I won't get in too much to the lore. I'll let if you're interested, I'll let you watch it and find out. But basically, this kid comes across a book that has fallen from another realm. And like I said, I'm not going to get into the lore right now, but he finds out that if you write, and it's written in there, but he finds out that if you write the name of somebody in this book and you think about their face, and you can specify you can kill them. And there's a lot of rules and a lot of lore and stuff. So I like I said, I don't want to get into all that right now, but it's a pretty cool show, and it turns into like this cat and mouse between this kid and this famous detective. Really cool, and I've almost finished it and couldn't quite squeeze it in all to the month of January, but I got close. If I'd have started a little earlier, I'd have had it. Um, Next up is the cartoon The Batman from 2004. It ran from 2004 to 2008. I just recently started this one. Somehow, I never knew about this show. I grew up, I've talked about it a lot, and I'm going to be talking about it again in this video. I grew up loving the Batman animated series. I mean, that's one of my, still to this day, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. It's a comfort show. Anytime I'm doing anything and I just want something on, that's one of my go-tos is I'll jump on HBO Max or Max, and I'll turn that show on and I'll just let it run. And a lot of times, whatever I'm doing, I'll end up stopping because I get caught up in watching it. I just did that the other night. I love the show. And so I I grew up on that one and Batman Beyond, and obviously New Adventures of Batman, but that's kind of the same thing as the animated series. And I come across this show on Netflix, and it's the Batman from 2004, and it's it's got kind of an interesting it's interesting. It's a cool one. It's a very different art style. It's a very different type of story. This is a very different Bruce Wayne and Batman than we've seen. It's a very different Joker. And what's crazy is I've seen clips of this Joker, in other things, and I just never knew what it was from. So now it's kind of cool to have connected that dot. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. It's uh, it's a lot of fun. I'll say that. It's not so far, and I'm about halfway through season 1. So far, it's not on the level of the animated series. Given the art style and the tone and stuff, I doubt it gets to that level, but it's still a lot of fun, and being the Batman horror that I am, I'm eating it up. It's a pretty cool show. Next up, this one I kinda cheated to put it on here, but it's taken up so much of my time in terms of watch time that I had to put it on here, and that is Smallville. So I know I said first time watches. This is the only one on here I'm kind of cheating on because I watched this as a kid. And I remember watching this as a kid with, as a family, we'd sit down and watch Smallville. I never forgot the theme song and the opening credits. There are a few things from the show that I still remembered to this day without having ever revisited the show. And I think it was maybe September, maybe September or October. Um, I sat down. I was like, let's revisit Smallville. I seen it on Hulu and was like, let's go. This looks fun. And so started it up, and I've just been having a blast just watching this show. It's so much fun, and there's just a lot of charm. It's got that early two. I mean, it started in 2001, and so it's got that early 2000s charm to it. The soundtrack is incredible. I find myself almost every episode going, "Oh, I forgot about that song," or "Dude, that band completely slipped my mind." Or there'll be songs on there I'm like, "I don't know what this is," but and it's just updating my playlist. Awesome soundtrack. Got the best Lex Luthor probably of all time. We'll see what Nicholas Holt does, but Michael Rosenbaum killed it as Lex Luthor. By far the most interesting character. Um, Great. It's just a great show. It's a lot of fun. It's cheesy, uh, but at the same time, that's what gives it its charm. So definitely check out Smallville. I'm still like I said, I started it before January, so I kind of cheated to put it on here. But I've spent so much time in January watching Smallville that I couldn't justify not having it on here. So Smallville, it's on there. And then my last one. This is the only one that I started and finished, and I teased it at the beginning because it's only one season, and that is The Haunting of Hill House. I started this one. I've okay. So I kind of did a little bit. I'm a Mike Flanagan fan, and I deep dived Mike Flanagan's movies, and so I've watched all his films, and I love him as a director. and I had never checked out his series, and so I've just been adding them. And Follow the House of Usher was getting so much buzz last year that I said, "You know what? I think it's about time that I just sit down and watch a series." And it's hard for me to do that. I really don't watch a lot of series anyways because I'm always been a movie guy. I like to just watch the movie and be done with it. But a series is a commitment. It's a long time. You don't get a conclusion for a while. And so I'm always hesitant about jumping into a series, but I said, "You know what? I love Mike Flanagan." And it was during an off week where it was just me. It was I had nothing going on. I said, let's just binge through this." And I got so engrossed in this story. And it's so interesting because anybody who doesn't know is kind of following this kind of mystery. It's kind of a mystery, but it's not really. But you have this group of siblings. You have 5 siblings, and the format's cool because it starts off you're following a different sibling for each one, and you're kind of learning about that sibling, and you kinda get that Mike Flanagan flair where you see it in movies like Oculus, where he likes to play with the past and the way he gives you information, and so you get a lot of that here, and you get to learn about each of these characters, and then it kinda all culminates, and they come together, and it's a very, very compelling story, and it's just a very cool series, and by far one of the best jump scares I've ever seen. Y'all should have warned me, and actually you did. That's my fault. I started to blame you, but I can't blame you. I knew that there was a massive jump scare. I had no idea what it was. I've avoided all spoilers for Hill House, for Bly Manor, for House of Usher. I've avoided all spoilers for all of them. Midnight Club and Midnight Mass. That I know nothing about them. And so when I went into this, the only thing I knew was that there was a massive jump scare. And it's just because I was around people when they were watching it and they were talking, "Oh, dude, that jump scare just destroyed me." And so I was curious and it got me. It got me good. But yeah, the show was great. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. I'm glad I watched it, and I'm excited to jump into Bly Manor. I've kind of been a little hesitant because when I finished it, I started to jump right into Bly Manor, and I was like, I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. That was kind of heavy, and I've heard that Bly Manor is a little heavier in terms of you know that tone. So, well, I'll jump into it eventually. So that does it for the series that I've been watching in January. Now let's look at films that I've been watching. That does it for series. So yeah, let's jump into films, and I'm gonna first talk about rewatches of older films. That doesn't necessarily mean old films, because some of these come out last year. Spoiler. And so this is just anything that released prior to January 1st of 2024. This is anything that I've rewatched, and I had a pretty good selection here. And first, I'm just going to talk about I kind of in my notes I took a lot of notes for this episode. I wanted to try something new, and so I took a lot of notes, and I have everything categorized, and it's very organized. And you'd be proud of me for these notes. um, and so yeah, so first I want to talk about the comic book films. Let's just do that. And I was talking about the Batman show earlier from 2004. Let's just segue right in. Films that I've rewatched in January. Let's get down to it. First up, the Batman, baby, Matt Reeves. And I just want to, I've talked a lot about this movie in the past few streams, for a number of reasons. Talking about news with DC stuff, talking about the upcoming Joker movie, and then playing Arkham, and they brought the Pattinson skin in, and so I've talked a lot about it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit here. I rewatched it, and look, guys, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I was hesitant to say that when I first watched it because I was like, I don't want to be that guy that's just the recency bias jumps in and says it's his favorite. But at this rate, this is one of the most rewatched films for me. They come out in 2022, and I'd bet money that I've seen it more than a lot of I'm gonna say seen it more than most of the movies that I've watched. I mean, it's I haven't watched it as much as Revenge of the Sith or anything. That's a whole different story. But look, I love this movie. It's again one of my favorite movies of all time, and you know, it still holds up for me. I've watched it again, like I said, I've watched it so many times at this rate, and it doesn't get old. And I sometimes I find myself finding things new that I like about it. Um, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I remembered something that I didn't have pulled up, and I wanted to go ahead and get that ready. Being all my all my organization I was just talking about, and I wasn't organized here. But yeah, let's just keep that going. So the Batman, I watched it again and still love it. Still hold it as high as I did the first time I watched it, maybe even a little higher. Every time I watch it, it's one of those movies that just makes me want to turn around and just go right back in and watch it again. It's one of those movies. Um, but yeah, speaking of Batman, let's just keep it going. The Dark Knight trilogy. I just decided to lump them all together because I decided to just watch them all instead of just when I finished the Batman, I was like, "Ah, I can't. I don't want to turn around and annoy everybody for watching it again." So let me just jump into the old Batman films, and yeah, the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. For a long time, I you'd have been hard pressed for me to say anything else is my favorite movie other than Revenge of the Sith. The Dark Knight trilogy has always been up there for me, and I fluctuate all the time on which one I like the most. Actually, right now, it is the most different that my ranking is has ever been. Um, if I was to rank the Dark Knight trilogy right now, it's just 3 movies, but if I was to rank the trilogy right now in terms of the ones that I've been most compelled to keep rewatching, it would be which is crazy because this one was always my favorite, but Rises would be last place right now. Then it would be Dark Knight, and then Batman Begins. It's reverse order. Um, yeah, and okay, yeah, cool. Dark Knight trilogy is remembered mostly for the Dark Knight specifically, but yeah, that's just me. Yeah, and you're not wrong. Everybody, and I'm gonna go ahead and say this too. This isn't really what this video is. Maybe I'll do a separate video talking specifically about the Dark Knight trilogy. But I kind of went down a rabbit hole today, so I'll talk briefly on it. Briefly. Um, I think in recent years, the Dark Knight trilogy has taken some hits for me because not anything the movies have done. I still love the movies. And like I said, right now, for some reason, it's never been that way. But right now, Batman Begins is my favorite of the three. I love these movies. I will always love these movies. But here in recent years, they've kind of taken a little bit of a hit for me because of the fans. I'm kind of getting sick of the Nolan trilogy fans. And look, Nolan's one of my favorite. Again, it has nothing to do with the movies whatsoever. But when everything gets compared to The Dark Knight, it starts to really get grating. And today specifically, I don't remember what actually even brought it up. Oh, I do remember what brought it up, but I won't get into that right now. But I was going down a rabbit hole of all of the on I was reading on Reddit because Reddit's where I go when I wanna see what people are saying about stuff, and so I looked it up on Reddit and just talking about the Batman and certain things about the Batman, I wanted to see what some opinions were, and it was so frustrating because I won't say everyone, that'd be hyperbolic. Every other comment in this thread was comparing something about the Batman to the Dark Knight, and it was nonstop. It was things that merited no comparison. And in specifically, one of the ones that I saw the most was the car chase and the chase on the highway and the Batman and the rooftops and actually a couple of different chases and because everybody likes to compare the second film of a trilogy to the first of a new one, but we won't talk about that right now. And yeah, I was reading it, and I'm telling you, Nolan fans, not Nolan fans, but Dark Knight fans are pretty insufferable. And I'm kind of, because of them, the films had kind of taken a big hit for me, which is why I'm glad I rewatched them in January, because this most recent rewatch, when I watched all three of them and I kind of binged through them, Batman Begins, Into the Dark Knight, and then Into Rises, I realized, okay, yeah, I still do love these films. It's just the people, the discourse around these films has really knocked it back for me. So I'm glad I rewatched them because it reminded me how much I actually like the films. Because I'm telling you, there for a little while, I was really starting to resent The Dark Knight a bit because of how the much of a pedestal people have put it on. And so yeah, that was just a kind of a sidebar. We won't. I'll do a separate Batman video. Me and Derpy will go into it in another video where we'll talk Batman. If I can get you to agree to that, we can do that. Um, Next up, I watched Mask of the Phantasm. So talking about the animated series earlier, Mask of the Phantasm was another one this year or this January that I rewatched again. I'm just been in this Batman mood lately, man, where I'm just watching, I'm playing Batman, I'm listening to the soundtracks. And Mask of the Phantasm, there's nothing I can say negative about it. It's got one of my favorite Batman romances in it. It's got one of my favorite portrayals of him donning the cowl, and specifically for Alfred's reaction, it's great. Um, One thing on this most recent rewatch, I'm not crazy about the. I like it in theory. I'm not crazy about execution on the on the climax between Batman and Joker and the Phantasm. Joker kind of was starting to grate on my ears a little bit with this. Just it's nothing bad. Again, it's not a negative, but it was something I noticed this time where it was like, yeah, it's not my favorite, not my favorite. But yeah, Mask of the Phantasm, it's still great. It's one of my favorites. Feels just like an extension, and basically is an extension of the animated series, and that's probably why I love it so much. And yeah, just great stuff. Next up, the last one in terms of comic book films that I rewatched this month, and that is Joker 2019. Now, I had talked about this one already in my most anticipated video. I was talking about my most anticipated of the year because Joker 2 has just been steadily climbing my list. One of the reasons is because of my rewatch of the 2019 movie, where when I originally watched it, I liked it a lot. I think I gave it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. I liked it a lot. I think it was an 8 out of 10 is what I originally gave it. And I loved it. The only things I didn't like is it was just kind of, I hate to go as far as saying that I was gatekeeping myself, but kind of in a way where to me I was thinking, okay, Batman's too young. I don't like it being a grown man Joker, and because I think in the film he's 30 or like 31 or 32 in the film, and Batman's or Bruce, I guess, is like 11. And so I didn't like that. I didn't like the implications that either Batman doesn't face this Joker or the Joker that Batman faces is someone who was inspired by this Joker, which would make Batman's Joker in this universe on a hypothetical, it would make his Joker a copycat. And that's just not, to me, that wasn't satisfying as Joker. So that brought it down for me. Also, I didn't like on first watch spoilers for Joker 2019 for anyone who hasn't seen it. I'll give you a countdown on the fingers because I'm about to spoil a major plot point. All right, here we go. You've been warned. That's the best warning I've ever given. I'm proud of myself. Um, One of the big plot points in Joker is obviously his unreliable narration. You know, you're seeing everything from his point of view and it's skewed. Everything he's seeing is skewed. And one of these is this relationship with his neighbor. And there's a scene in the film where he's distraught, and he goes to her apartment and he sits on the couch, and she comes stepping out. And by this time, they've grown very close. Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. They've become very close throughout the film. And she walks in and she sees him and she's terrified and she's like, "What are you doing in my apartment? You shouldn't be here." What's up, my man? Hey, happy birthday on stream. Happy birthday on stream, my guy. Y'all give him a little HB in the chat. I've never seen you on YouTube here. This is the first time I've caught you on YouTube. Good stuff. Good stuff. I don't. There you go. This is fan service for you. Here we go. There we go. That's the fan service you get. He calling me Hardy. All right, I can't do this. I can't do the glasses. It reflects the light. It makes the light so much brighter than it actually is. But yeah, what was I saying? Um, and you get a flashback in this scene, and it flashbacks and it does this thing where it shows them together, and then it shows that he was actually alone, and then them together and actually alone, and it does this, and you go through this flashback, and it basically just tells you, yeah, he imagined the whole thing. And when I first watched it, I hated that. I was like, no, why did they do a flashback? I don't. I'm notorious for not liking flashbacks. Why did they do that? And I just wanted it to leave it up to the audience to decide. That was my original thing. I still gave it an 8 out of 10. I still loved it, but that was something that really impacted it for me. When I rewatched it this most recent time, those things didn't bother me at all. I watched it and was like, yeah, I was kind of too harsh on it. This movie's awesome. And so I bumped up my score and everything on it. I love it. And I'm going to say it again. I cannot wait for the second one. Can't wait. I want to talk about my ideas on the second one. Hey, yeah, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. I want to see. I want to see. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Next up, this is going to be my horror thriller rewatches of earlier films this year, or for January. You got to get used to saying that. And that is Evil Dead Rise. One of my favorite horror films of last year. It was beat out by Infinity Pool. And who knows, maybe that changes because the more I watch Rise, the more I'm loving it. Rise is a film that it's growing and growing and growing on me. Skarsgård makes sense, by the way, for a fan cast. I mean, he's already got the creepy clown thing down. So, and he's a great actor. So he it makes sense. I hope they change Keegan from that's my only negative for the Batman 2022 is that Joker scene. That scene it feels so out of place for me. I know Matt Reeves has talked about it and said he originally took it out and says he didn't feel right with it taken out. I wish he just would have left it out and just kept it as kind of the way he did. To me, it didn't serve the film in any way. And so I yeah, I wasn't crazy about that at all. So I hope they change. And I watched the deleted scene and I'm not crazy about the Joker's portrayal. So I hope that changes. But yeah, anyways, Evil Dead Rise, it continues. Every time I watch it, it just continues to get better and more enjoyable. It's so much fun. Every time I watch it, I find more and more of the comedy aspects, which when I first watched it was something I said, I kind of wish they would have made it a little more darkly comedic. And every time I have watched it since, I go, well, it's there. I just didn't really see it. And every time I watch it, I see more and more of it. So yeah, watch still love it. And who knows, it may end up overtaking Infinity Pool for my favorite horror film of 2023. Almost at 2024. And then yeah, my to cap off my rewatches for January, Mission Impossible. And I watched 3 through 5, and I haven't watched 6 and 7 yet, and 1 and 2 were earlier. So in the month of January, Mission Impossible 3 all the way to Rogue Nation. And look, these films, I they've gotten better with each installment, save for Fallout. In my opinion, it's the best. So you'd have to do some shuffling there, but they keep doing what, in my opinion, and I talked about this a little bit after I watched Rogue Nation. There's scenes in Rogue Nation where obviously you have several sequences. You have the plane at the beginning, the big plane stunt. That's what everyone remembers. You have the car chase, or actually, first you have where they have to retreat. He has to go down and switch the little chip thing to let Benji get through the security. And I was talking about this with someone, and I said, "This is what makes these films great. This is what sets apart great action scenes, or just great suspense scenes, or whatever. This is what sets these apart from your standard, just run of the mill action movies that come out. Because you look at this, okay, not only do they have to break into this room and replace this chip so Benji can get through security. Not only that, the room's full of water. Not only is the room full of water, they have metal detection systems, so you can't bring an oxygen tank, so you have to hold your breath. Not only do you have to hold your breath, but there's a current and you have to dive down a hole and basically ride a chute down into this room. And then you have to shut the current off. Not only do you have to do all that, you have to dodge the arms that are moving around in there as well. Not only that, you have a time limit. Not only are you running out of oxygen, but you have to get it done in the 3-minute window that you have before Benji will die if you don't. So many elements that just keep adding and adding and adding and just providing layers. Then you get out of the scene and it immediately follows up into a car chase. And it's the same thing. Not only are is Ethan Hunt going after is Ethan Hunt going after Rebecca Ferguson? I can't remember her name right now. It's like Ilsa or something like that. Going after Rebecca Ferguson. Not only that, but she's also being pursued by this biker gang of Solomon Lane's people. So that's a 3-person chase. And also, Hunt's being pursued by Jeremy Renner and what's his character's name? It's Benji. I'm blanking on the names right now. He's being pursued by his guys who are in the 4x4. Not only that, but Tom Cruise is oxygen deprived. Ethan Hunt's been oxygen deprived because he almost died in the water, and so didn't get enough flow to oxygen to his brain. So his function, his motor function, isn't quite there yet, and he's trying to drive. These are just things they keep adding, and they keep adding and adding, and then it goes on, and then the car wrecks, and then he has to jump out and jump on the motorcycle and chase her and 2 of the guys on a motorcycle, and they're having to ride a mountainside on this windy roads and traffic, and they just keep adding things to make the action more entertaining, more engaging. And that's what sets these movies apart from the others. This one reason I love John Wick so much is because they keep pushing it, and they push it and push it. And I'm not talking about having to push believability, which I mean you could say they do in some ways, but they just they push the boundaries in one way or another. With John Wick, they're pushing what you can actually capture in camera in terms of action and choreography. They're pushing the choreography and the fighting and what weapons. Okay, John has already used guns. Guns are getting would be too boring, so let's add bulletproof suits, and now we have to add something else. Now he has to use something else. Let's throw bow and arrows in the mix. And let's go ahead and throw nunchucks in there. He hasn't used nunchucks yet. Let's throw a dragon's breath shotgun in there. And while we do this, let's not just film it our usual way. Let's bring the camera up to a god's eye view and hover over the action like it's a video game. That's what I'm talking about. Keep losing focus. I don't know why. There we are. I don't know why it's doing that today. Let's drop my pen. I like fiddling with stuff, no homo, with my hands, and I drop my pen. So yeah, that's what sets these movies apart, and that's one reason I love these movies so much, and they still hold up. Uh, they haven't lost anything. I 3 through 5, it gets better with each one of them, just pushing the bounds of what can be achieved for action films. And Fallout, I think, is still the best one, uh, if for multiple reasons, not just that. And then I think Dead Reckoning was just as good in terms of pushing the boundaries. I mean, it kind of the same thing that I was just saying. Dead Reckoning, you have the car chase. Not only are they in a car chase, but they're in the tiniest car possible. Not only are they in this tiny car that's hard to control, they're handcuffed, but they're not just handcuffed together, they're handcuffed in the opposite position that makes everything awkward to do. So that's what I'm talking about. And just constantly finding ways to improve what could just be a standard scene. You could just be watching a standard car chase. But we've seen standard car chases. So how can we improve? How can we make that better? How can we make it more entertaining, more engaging? And they manage to do it every time. And I can't wait for Mission Impossible 8, whatever it ends up being called. I can't wait. So yeah, that does it for rewatches of earlier films. Now let's talk about first time watches of older films. I'm not saying just old. Like I said, it kind of the same metric for what I just said in regards to rewatches. It's just anything from January 1st of 2024, anything before that. And so these are first time watches for me. And some of these on here are kind of shocking first time watches. And I was happy to finally knock these out because they've been on my list for a long time. So let's get right to it. I'm just going to go down the line that I have here. Horror thriller. I knocked a lot of horror thrillers out in the month of January. You'll find that out if you watch this channel for any amount of time. You'll find out that I really like horror films. Aside from Batman, horror is my genre, and I watched a lot of them here. And so let's just kick it off. My first time watch. I don't like that. My let's just number one for first time watches. That's better. Of January 2024, and that is The Babadook. Now, this is a film that has been on my list for a long time. It got a ton of acclaim, and I've always it pops up all the time in lists for best horror movies of the past 20 years, or scariest horror films of all time. It's always there. And so I finally got around to checking it out. It's been on my watch list forever, and I just found a pocket of time where it was like, let's you know what, let's watch The Babadook, and it was good. I didn't love it the way everyone else has seemed to love it. I found um, there are things that it does that I think it does very well. I think the acting all around is fantastic. I think it does an excellent job of portraying grief, and you're just seeing this woman's life fall apart due to her own grief and how it's affecting not only her but her kid and her family and her coworkers. It affects everybody, and you're seeing that it's excellently portrayed. But for me, it just felt lackluster in the story, or not in the story, in the scares and the horror side of things. Um, I I think in terms of grief, it it's hard to talk about grief in horror films and not bring up movies like Hereditary and or even something like Midsummer, which I'm not even a super massive fan of Midsummer. I thought it was good, but it wasn't amazing like everyone was saying. Um, but I think there are elements that are done in those films that are done in Babadook, and you can just find them in other places better. Also, and this may just be me. It's probably absolutely just me, but I couldn't. take the monster serious. I couldn't take the Babadook serious, especially towards the end when you start actually getting the appearances of the Babadook and you're hearing him. Uh, because his little roar that he does, especially in the end, he does it several times. It's the exact same sound effect. I'm almost positive, and I didn't check this. I wish I would have checked it so I could know for sure. But I'm gonna have to check this afterwards because I thought it when I was watching it, and it kind of cracked me up, and I couldn't take it serious. And then I never verified, but I'm almost positive the sound effect the Babadook makes when he's roaring at the end is the same one as the T-Rex and Land Before Time. I'm almost positive. And I hate to be that guy, but the T-Rex and Land Before Time a little scarier than the Babadook. It's just let's just put that out there. So I liked the Babadook. It to me, I was watching it and I was like, okay, I see some elements of why it was so acclaimed, but then there are other cases where I was watching and I was like, this isn't this kind of feels it feels now watching it like it was a little bit hyperbolic in the way everybody just gushed over it at the time because I remember the discourse about it and everybody loved the Babadook. Sorry, I gotta keep pushing this thing back. I don't have my hat. I have that one, but I like leaving that one there. I don't have my streaming hat. So yeah. Next up, again, I liked the Babadook, and I guess I could kind of give scores for these things. I should have gave scores for the others. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10. I don't remember. I enjoyed it. I don't have any negatives about it other than just it's not very engaged. I will say that too. I didn't really say that. It's kind of just bland. I mean, it's very wash, rinse, repeat, and really the only high energy, the only high octane scene is when the mom herself is taken over, and then it's like, okay, here we go. Let's go. Let's get some heart pounding scares in, and it's kind of over pretty quick. So I liked it. It wasn't to me. It wasn't as good as everybody had kind of made it sound. Next up is a film called Coherence. Now, this is a little low budget film that I found on Tubi. And actually, you know what? I'm not going to talk about Coherence yet. I'm going to talk about the first in this line that I started watching, and that is the movie Triangle. Come on. I think that was my fault. So there's this movie Triangle. Again, it's a Tubi movie. And when I started, I was like, you know what? This has been in my watch list on I saved it to my watch list on Letterboxd. I've had it on my Tubi watch list. I'm just gonna knock it out. I had some time. So it's kind of in that Hill House time span where I had a lot of free time and I was just knocking movies and shows out. And one of them was Triangle here, and I started it and I thought it was gonna be a slasher on a ship. That's all I saw the cover and I was like, okay, slasher, sackhead slasher on a ship. Cool. Let's do it. I love slashers. This is just going to be a schlocky good time. And I was so wrong about what this movie ended up being. This movie is such a cool concept, and I'm not going to even say a single detail about this film because anybody who's watching this now or in the future, if you haven't seen the movie Triangle, go watch it because I had a great time, especially when I went into it thinking it was a slasher. I was like, all right, let's do this. And then the farther I went, I was like, okay, never mind. Never mind. This is a lot. This is a lot. And it's cool. It's a very cool film. And it inspired a lot of conversation afterwards where I was just like, I have to know what people are saying about this film. And yeah, very cool movie. I don't want to say anything else about it. So the reason I skipped is because I watched that one first. Come on. I skipped because I watched that one first. I watched Triangle first, and then after that one, I was like, okay, I'm kind of in the mood for these mind bender movies, the mind twister movies. I was like, let's just see what else is like this. And Coherence was on there, and I said, let's do it. And so I started the movie Coherence. Again, another movie I'm not going to say anything about. It is an extremely low budget little thriller, I guess you could call it a thriller. I don't know. And it was a lot of fun. I had a good time with it. And they whoever these people were that made this, they made an excellent use of their budget. An excellent use. It's not perfect by any means. Neither one of these, Triangle or Coherence, they're not perfect, but they are a lot of fun. And it was different than what I was expecting them to be, which was a pleasant surprise. So yeah, next up, we're going to do Mandy. Nick Cage. This was my first time watching Mandy. And look, again, I keep saying this. A lot of these have been on my watch list for a very long time. And I just finally got the chance to knock them out. And look, Mandy was in there. Anybody who caught my Friday the 13th video, not Friday the 13th, Five Nights at Freddy's video, when it's where it's me and Storkland with Dad, and we're talking about kind of doing our deep dive into Five Nights, and we're talking about why we liked it, why we didn't like it, what we would change, and we go very much in depth. And we had a conversation about these Nick Cage movies, the kind of string of Nick Cage movies, because of he brought it over to talking about Willy's Wonderland, and so I got kind of brought it up, and I have had these films on my watch list for a long time. Willy's Wonderland, Mandy, Color Out of Space, I think is what it's called. Pig. A lot of these. I keep dropping this. A lot of the Nick Cage films I've heard mixed things about. I've heard great things about. And it's just kind of this little resurgence that he's been having. And so they've been on my list. And I checked out Willy's Wonderland back in November, I think. And I I was like half and half on Willy's Wonderland. Some things I liked, some things I really didn't like. I felt like they kind of dropped the ball a little bit on the how fun the concept. Sorry, I had to pick that up. How fun the concept could have been, or how fun the concept itself was, and I just wish the execution would have been there. That's not the case with Mandy. I knew nothing going in. I all I knew I had seen one clip from Mandy, and it's a 2-second clip, and I had seen it used in multiple videos where people use it as kind of a meme reaction, where it's him in the bathroom and he's screaming, he's doing his little, and that's it. I didn't know nothing about it. And so imagine my surprise when I actually watched it and started seeing what this thing was about. um, Mandy is a wild movie. It it starts off, you're like, is this gonna be a high concept like A24 type of film? Is that what this is about to be? And kind of at the beginning, it starts off seeming that way. There's some things in it where you're like, wow, that is very artsy and very, very out there. And you move along, and then it hits a spot where it kind of changes and it goes a little. I don't even know. You start to get Nick Cage being Nick Cage, and I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's a little too long. I think you probably could have trimmed some stuff, and shortened it up. And I don't know, mate. I started to say maybe dial it back a bit, but I don't know. I think it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's so weird, but man, a great time. A pleasant surprise from to follow up Willy's Wonderland, and so that's got me excited to check out the other Nick Cage movies on my watch list. Next up, speaking of A24, Killing of the Sacred Deer. This is the Colin Farrell, Barry Keoghan, however you say his name. Um, and yeah, I really liked it. A lot of one thing I liked about this one is it's done in a way that is so. I think the best word for it is awkward. It's an awkward film, very awkward, where you're watching it, it's just like this is. Why are they talking like that? Why are they? Why are they doing this? And I'm telling you, it's just really, really, it's a cool film. The concept is I started to say fun. It's not a fun concept by any means. I wouldn't describe this film as fun, and outside of just the joy you get out of hearing everybody talk the way they are. Um, but it's a very interesting film because you kind of see the way these relationships start breaking down under the stress that the situation causes, and you start to see the way these relationships function. And there's a scene that's a pretty heavy scene in the third act with the son involving his haircut and his chores. And I was watching, I was like, man, that's pretty heavy. And that's what this is. This film, you get to see. I hesitate to call it a full on character study because wouldn't say it goes that deep, but it in a way it's like a character study light where you kind of just get to see the makeup of these relationships. Very cool movie. And the ending is kind of comedic, but it's in a way where you're watching it and you're stressed out and you can't help but laugh from the stress. That's what it is. And yeah, great stuff. Great performances all around, and I enjoyed it a lot. I don't remember what my score was for it. Um, Next up, again talking about A24. It Comes at Night. There's a couple A24s on here. I watched It Comes at Night for the first time this month, and um, less what I just said about because this is not also not a fun movie. Killing, like I just said about Killing of the Sacred Deer, it's not a fun movie at all. It Comes at Night is less fun, and to me, there's less making up for it. Where I said Sacred Deer is not fun at all, but it's not supposed to be fun, and you find enjoyment in other areas. You find enjoyment in their performances and in the way the dialogue is and seeing how these relationships are functioning and especially that third act. This one didn't really have that. And once you're kind of introduced to the world and kind of the way things are going to be functioning, it honestly kind of slows way down because you're just watching people operate. You're just watching people function day to day. And that kind of started to get a little old. It's a little repetitive. And then when you do get the third act, it's just very bleak movie. And I guess though I just had a little more hope for the premise, of just what it could have done. And I don't know, I just feel like it didn't quite get to where I would have liked it to get. Still a good movie, very competently directed. I'd say that in my opinion, I think that's the strongest thing here is the direction. Um, and I liked the acting and everything. It technically this film is great. It's just on an enjoyment level, on a rewatch level, it's just not there. It's not there. So yeah, I don't remember what I gave it either. Probably should have had a list of all these so I could see and I can tell you what my scores were. Um, Next up, a little bit older, Cabin Fever 1 and 2. I did a double feature of the Cabin Fever films. Um, I these are more films that I knew nothing about. I knew Eli Roth for the first one and Ty West for the second. Two directors. I started to say two directors I really like. I can't really say that about Eli Roth. I really like Ty West. Ty West is one of the most interesting directors working right now for me. Not just because of the X trilogy, not quite a trilogy yet. Not just because of that, but also, come on, why are you doing this? Focus, focus, focus. What we doing? I don't know what it's doing. Um, thanks a lot, camera. Made me lose my train of thought. Um, Ty West. Ty West is one of the most interesting directors working today, in my opinion. Eli Roth, I wouldn't quite say that about, but I have a lot of respect for Eli Roth. He's one of the more fun ones to me, where I might not quite like all of his films. I think he's good at what he does, but I think he also has some major he's kind of like Rob Zombie for me. He's not as egregious as Rob Zombie. In the case of I think the directing, I think he has very strong, very high highs, very strong attributes, but his weaknesses are pretty bad weaknesses, and they're on the forefront in a lot of ways. And actually, in some ways, they're kind of the same because I'd say Rob Zombie's weaknesses are his characters and his dialogue, and that's kind of the same way for Eli Roth. Cabin Fever is kind of right up his alley, though. See, I didn't know anything going into Cabin Fever. Again, this is another film. Most of these films on here for these first time watches, I went into knowing nothing. I avoid everything about films that I haven't seen. And so I went into it knowing nothing and just who the director was. That's it. And I knew that I probably shouldn't eat during the movie. And that's that comes with it, the Eli Roth territory. And yeah, it kind of fits perfectly for Eli Roth's tone. The characters are kind of dumb and they say stupid things, and you're kind of meant to laugh at it. And the gore and the effects is over the top, and especially you get to like the what's the kid say? I can't remember what the kid said. Pancakes? Is that what he says? The pancake kid on the porch. You get stuff like that, and you're just like, it's bizarre, and you're like, what am I watching right now? And there's just a very dark humor the whole time. And I thought I enjoyed Cabin Fever 1 a lot. And honestly, I told you I watched 1 and 2. I kind of enjoyed 2 as well. Don't get me wrong, Cabin Fever 2, it sucks. It sucks bad. It's not a good movie at all. But I kind of had fun with it. Where the worst part, the one of the best parts of Cabin Fever 1 is the characters and listening to them banter because they're all kind of dumb and they have a funny way of arguing. You just can't help but chuckle at them. The second one is kind of the opposite, where I kind of didn't like the characters, but the situational stuff was the funny stuff. It's definitely more of a comedy in the second one. But yeah, it was a 1-2 punch for me. The first one, I enjoyed it a good bit. The second one, I enjoyed it less, but I still had fun with it. It's definitely a bad movie, but I had fun with it. Um, Tickle. I don't know if it's like a hair on my face or something. Um, Next up, A24 again, baby. The Black Coat's Daughter. Now, I watched this film kind of in preparation leading up to Oz Perkins' next 2 movies because he's got Long Legs, which I don't know when it's coming out, if they've dropped the date for it yet, but he's dropping 2 movies. I don't know if the second one's gonna come out this year or not, but you have Long Legs and then you have The Monkey. And so kind of in preparation, not really in preparation, but kind of just doing early homework, have been kind of watching his movies that I hadn't seen. Black Coat's Daughter was one of them. Um, the Black Coat's Daughter is a movie that I I liked it. I wasn't really enjoying it as I was watching it at first, and then certain things started to click, and I retroactively enjoyed it a lot more. When certain plot points clicked for me, it made the film so much more enjoyable, and I was like, "Okay, this is pretty cool. I like this." And it's got a really cool ending. Emma Roberts is on fire in this film. I Emma Roberts kills it. Pretty much everybody. These A24 films are kind of mostly all the same. The acting on a technical level, these films are great, and this one's no different. And if it had kind of kept the same momentum that I started with by the end, it probably would have been a film I wouldn't have enjoyed all that much. But by the end of it, once things clicked and started getting conclusions to certain things, I enjoyed it a lot more. And there's just some really cool ideas going on in this film. And it plays kind of like I was saying about the Babadook with grief. This one kind of plays with loneliness in the same way, and I think it was executed perfectly. So really cool movie. It's not a favorite. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a favorite of mine. It's going to be in my rotation now from now on. Definitely going in my rotation. I wouldn't say that, but it's a movie that I'm glad I watched. I think it's very well made and a lot of great things about it. All right, next up, Radio Silence with Ready or Not. Uh yeah, first time watch for me. I had never seen it. So I'm glad I finally got around to watching it. I have been kind of waiting on this one to hit a streaming service to to finally catch it. I didn't catch it in theaters, and so I've just been kind of on the lookout for it. And I had a notification set up to where when it become available on a streaming service, I would find out. And it showed up on Fubo. I think is what it's called, Fubo TV or something. So I jumped on, did a 7 day free trial, watched it, and then canceled the free trial. Um, Ready or Not is a ton of fun. It's an absolute blast. And I did a quick little Radio Silence ranking. They only have three films that they've made. I mean, they've jumped on some shorts and some anthologies, but of films they made, I think there was only three of them. It's this one, Ready or Not, and then the two Scream films. And I have very strong feelings about the Scream films. I think Ready or Not is their strongest movie. Um, and I had a lot of fun with it. There are things that I kind of wish it would have done differently, but I'm not going to spoil anything. Definitely, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's got some great stuff in it, some awesome performances, and it's funny. It's really funny. There's stuff that had me laughing pretty good. And so, yeah, Ready or Not, glad I got to watch it. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. So, good stuff. And then last to cap off my first time watches of older horror thrillers, that is going to be the newest one on the list, and that is Saltburn. Yes, I missed Saltburn for 2023, but I finally got a chance to watch it on what did that come on? I was on something, one of the streaming services. I finally got around to watching it, and it was okay. I hate to be the guy who didn't like it or didn't love it like everyone else, but it wouldn't be me if I wasn't being honest. And I gotta say, it. I found myself kind of bored through most of it, and it was a very underwhelming reveal. And I think that's the worst part for me. If it would have built up to, I was not actively trying to figure out what was going on. I was just kind of enjoying it, but I kind of couldn't help it. And I kind of started thinking, okay, I think this is the direction they're going. And I guess I was thinking a little more outlandish because by the time the film ended and it wraps up, I was kind of like, I kind of wish he would have turned. I wish the twist would have been more in line with what I was expecting. Um, Again, that's kind of unfair. I'm not saying that mine idea was better, but I'm not gonna spoil it because it's the newest one on the list. So, but yeah, I had higher hopes for where it was gonna end up, and so that kind of brought it down for me. What is happening with my focus? Um, Very good film though, in terms of quality and everything. The I keep saying it. The quality, fantastic. The acting, fantastic. And I think for the most part, I think the plot's pretty good. And I really liked the ending and the way it actually ended. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I like that scene. And I think when I reviewed it, I said, it was I think I kind of likened Keoghan to Joaquin Phoenix and his stares. I don't remember what I said exactly, but it was something along those lines. And yeah, I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as everybody else seemed to. So that kind of was a little bit of a disappointment. And let's see, this is the miscellaneous I have, just a few more, and then we are on to the new releases, the encore of the film. What are we doing? Man, that focus is killing me right now. Um, all right, let's do it. In terms of miscellaneous, I just said miscellaneous because there's not enough to split these into different categories. First up is going to be Old Boy from 2003. Again, another film that I have been dying to watch, and I've just been waiting for it to become available. And when I seen it was coming to Netflix, I was like, "Let's go!" I've been so excited to watch this film, and I finally watched it. And look, it's just as good as you've heard, maybe even better. If you can, like, I'm just, I really don't know what to say. There, there are a couple of twists in this film. One of them, I guessed, and I was like, okay, I knew that was coming. I hope that's not all that they have in store. And then there's a second one that absolutely pulled the rug out from under me. And when I saw it, I was floored, and I couldn't believe it. And it's just such a cool film. There's some weird stuff here. There's definitely a very weird aspect, and you get that with a lot of foreign films because just the sense of humors and everything is so different than what we have, in terms of Western media and stuff. The sense of humor is so different. But if you can appreciate, you know, Eastern cinema, Eastern sense of humor and stuff like that, this film was such a treat. And if you haven't seen it, go to Netflix and watch it. It's such a cool film. One of the greatest action scenes of all time, and one of my favorite endings and twist for sure. Great film. And then I'm gonna cap this little section off with my that focus better stop. You better stop, camera. What is happening? I have never had this problem. Hold up. Let me fix this real fast. What is your deal? There we go. I'm just gonna do that every time, just off and on. See if that fixes it. I don't know what the problem is. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna finish this little section with kind of the happier stuff, I guess you could say. The more lighthearted stuff. There's a lot of horror and thriller and stuff before this, and I'm gonna end this with the fun stuff. And first off, I'm gonna say my best friend's wedding, Julia Roberts. Um, Side of me you didn't know about. I'm kind of a rom com guy. I low key love the '90s and 2000s rom coms. Julia Roberts, Reese Witherspoon. They have some of my favorite. They've got some of my favorite little rom coms of all time. And this one is a first time watch. I'd never seen it, and decided, you know what, I'm gonna check it out, and I did, and it's a blast, a lot of fun. Um, it's not perfect. None of these are. But if you just want to go in and smile, it's very charming. And just go in and just smile for 2 hours. That's the type of movie to do it with. And there's a character, George, in this film. If you haven't seen My Best Friend's Wedding, if you do actually sit down and watch it, which I encourage you to, you sit down and watch it, just know George, best character in the movie. George is pretty great. All right. Next up, to cap off this section, and then we are on to the new releases. I've saved these for last because they are probably the most relevant of anything else that I watched. And that is Mean Girls 1 and 2. Believe it or not, I had never seen the original Mean Girls. I know. I know. Let's see. I deserve it. Hold up. I deserve it. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna lie. I'd never seen it, and, so with the announce of the new one, I planned on it. I said, "You know what? I'm gonna watch it." And so I did. I sat down and I watched the original, and there's nothing I can say about it that hasn't been said already. It's probably one of the best comedies there is. Every I won't say every. I'll say 90% of the jokes landed for me. I was laughing very hard watching this movie. And look, the character of Janice and Damien, one of the funniest duos. I was having a blast every time they were on screen. Regina George in this one with Rachel McAdams, so funny, so funny. And trust me, we're going to be talking a lot about these characters. Like I said, they were the most relevant to the video. Just wait. The second one, look, it's not a good movie. Kind of what I said about Cabin Fever. It's not a good movie. I kind of had fun watching it. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of had fun with it. It's worse than Cabin Fever 2, but I would be lying if I said that I still didn't kind of enjoy it somewhere down deep. I kind of I have a soft spot for enjoyable bad movies, and that fell into that category for me. Again, not even close to being. I won't even say not even just as good. It's so far underneath being on the same quality level as the original that it's really not even in the conversation. I found that most people just pretend it doesn't exist. And look, I get it. Like I said, I don't think it's good, but I still kind of had fun with it. So I'm having trouble with this thing today. Just keeps falling off back here. All right. So that concludes all of the older films and series. So now let's talk about what everybody wants to hear, and that is the new releases. The films released between January 1st of 2024 and January 31st. And I'm going to start off with an honorable mention because it's a film that I really wanted to watch and couldn't because it didn't even show anywhere near me. So shame on you, studio, whichever one that was, for not putting it within an hour of me. Because I don't even know where the closest one was. It wasn't anywhere near me. And like I said, I checked an hour away. Nothing. And that's Founders Day. I would have liked to have seen Founders Day, studio. So I think you owe me a screener now. For whatever you drop next, I think you owe me a screener. No, I was excited kind of about checking out Father or Founders Day. I almost said Father's Day. Founders Day. Derpy Entertainment said it earlier about why January and February movies got to be so boring. It's kind of become the joke that January, especially with horror, if you have a horror film dropping in January, that means it's probably terrible. Because it's kind of the burial ground, the dumping ground for what the studio really doesn't care or have any faith in. And so that was kind of what I was expecting for Founders Day, but I still wanted to see it. So didn't get to, decided I'd mention it as an honorable mention. But we're just going to get into the actual review. And look, I have graphics for this one. What? Moving up in this world. Last place. I watched. Let me count real fast because I think I had 5 films. Give me 1 second. I think there was 5 movies. Yeah, I had 5 movies for the month of January. 5 new releases. Not off to a bad start. Just actually wait till I talk about these films because I feel like there's more negative than there is positive. Here we go. In last place for the month of January. I don't have a drum roll. I started to press a drum roll if I had it. And that is The Book of Clarence. I Look, I'd be lying if I said I was excited about this film. I really wasn't. Honestly, I really didn't care about this movie at all, but I wanted to watch it. I wanted to watch it and say, "You know what? I'm gonna go and experience it." I really don't have much interest in it, but I'm gonna check it out. And I probably could have avoided this one. It's not terrible. And so I want to talk about positives first. I want to talk about positives first. I'm a glass half full type of person. And so let's talk about the positives. And I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. Number one thing going for this film is the cinematography. There are some beautiful shots in this movie. There are some sequences. Camera better stop losing focus, boy. There are some excellent shots in this film where I saw it and was like, okay, that's really cool. I like that shot a lot. And so yeah, the cinematography here definitely the best part. I think that the actually, you know what? I started to say, but I don't want. I'm just gonna go ahead and jump in um, to my next positive, which is kind of a lump positive, and it's that the first half of the film is pretty fun. You know, yeah, the chariot race, the Barabbas fight, the slave fight, the plan in action when he makes his plan. He's like, if you've seen the trailer, you know where he says, "I'm gonna try without it because this thing just keeps falling out. My hair is driving me crazy right now." When he kind of has his plan, he's like, "I'm going to do what Jesus did," because he thinks Jesus is a. Because if you don't know, I'm just gonna kind of recap it for you real fast. So this is about a guy, Clarence, who is the twin brother of the disciple Thomas, and he is kind of the he's kind of the type of guy that he borrows money and he gambles it. He gambles this money away, and he gets told, if you don't pay me back, you're gonna die. By any he borrows money from a gangster. We'll just say it like that. And they tell him, pay us back or you die. And so he kind of devises a couple of different plans that don't work. And then he ultimately decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pretend to be what Jesus is, because Jesus had at this point had so much influence, and people were just flocking to him every city he went to and just falling at his feet and stuff. He said, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to collect money from these people, and that's going to pay me back, or that's going to pay off my debt. And so he does. That's his plan, and he enacts it. And when the plan is going down, it's pretty fun. And you're watching this con movie of this guy and his buddies pulling off this con, and it's pretty fun. Um, let's see, and the club scene is pretty fun, and then it follows up into like the soldiers that come for um, who do they come? I'm trying to remember who they come for. I don't. I think they're coming for Clarence. I think, and Barabbas, the slave, not to be confused with the biblical Barabbas, the murderer, the prisoner. Um, he steps up and he's like, "No, you're not taking him." And they kind of have this showdown on the street where he's running, he's taking spears and stuff. Really cool scene. Um, and yeah, the first half, pretty fun movie. It's just it has a decent time, and I'd say in terms of another positive, the performances here were all pretty solid. Most of them were all pretty solid. I there weren't really any standouts where it was just like, ah man, that's bad. Um, but yeah, mostly a mostly good time. I'll say that for the first half. But I'm just gonna have to go on to the negatives, and I'm just gonna be honest. Um, First up, this is kind of billed as a comedy, kind of, and for me, hardly any of the jokes landed. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a hard audience in terms of comedy. But I have kind of a preference in the sense of I don't like it when the comedy feels like they're trying to be funny. I don't like a film that tries to be funny. This was my problem with No Strings Attached. No, that's not No. I'm thinking of Natalie Portman. No Hard Feelings from last year. That was my biggest problem with it is that everything felt forced. It didn't feel natural. And to me, that's the way this one came across. It just felt like they were I it to me they're I kind of can't help but visualize when there's a film that's trying to be funny that I can see the writers sitting around and writing these jokes and going, "This is going to be a good one. Let's write a joke right here. Oh, that's going to be good." And it's just to me, it doesn't feel real. It feels kind of fake, and that's how I felt about the comedy in this film. And that kind of leads into my next negative, which is just the tone. The tone was kind of all over the place because like I said, it tries to be a comedy and it really tries to be a comedy and tries too hard in some aspects. And then it goes to trying to be heartfelt with the relationships and the message and and the stuff. It's like, oh wow, it tries to be all heartfelt and about the mom, Clarence and Thomas's mom and stuff like that. And then it tries to go back to being hilarious and like, oh, that's so funny. And then it tries to be tragic towards the end. And we're gonna talk about the end later. And then to inspirational. And it just switches and switches and switches, switch. And it doesn't balance any of these in an effective way for me. To me, every time it swapped tones, it was like hitting a hard 90-degree turn. And it was just like, wow, that doesn't work for me. And it did that several times in the film. And I'm not even talking about that's kind of in the first half too, where I said I enjoyed the first half for the most part. It's pretty fun. You have the chariot race and stuff like that, which to me, I think the chariot race is the best scene. And it's the first scene. But then you have the fight scene with Barabbas the slave, and that stuff is fun. But the comedy, even in the first half, just wasn't really doing that much for me. To me, again, it felt extremely forced. And then you get to the second half, and I'm gonna see because I want to kind of go in a natural order here. Um, and yeah. This is what I was wanting to say. So you have the comedy that feels extremely forced, and so it makes the comedic sections of the film feel extremely bland. It's just bland. There's nothing of substance there to for me because the comedy didn't work. And then the tragic scenes and the heartfelt scenes take such a strong turn. They feel so out of place that they kind of feel ridiculous, you know? And with that and then the comedy falling flat, there's just no levity whatsoever. There's no break. There was nothing that made me go, okay, that's pretty. Never mind. I was having a bad time, but that made it feel better because the comedy wasn't working in the funny sections, and then the tragic sections were so out of place that I couldn't find enjoyment there either. Um, and the pacing was terrible. I felt like the pacing was kind of all over the place. I don't mind long films. I actually really like long films. If you look in I mean, two of my actually more than that, most of my favorite movies of last year were 3-hour films. I don't mind long films whatsoever. I just got done gushing about a long film in the Batman. But here it just felt it was just over 2 hours. So it's not even that long, but I felt like they could have at least cut maybe 15 or 20 minutes out. At least. Because I was sitting there, I was like, okay, we're just kind of spinning our wheels. There's a lot of floating around, and if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Very literally floating around, and oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? I didn't work that time. I don't know what the deal is with my camera. I'm gonna have to figure that out. Usually I can do it by coming up here and then bringing it back, but it is just not wanting to cooperate today. There we are. I promise you, if you who's watching, it's not you. It's on my end. It's the camera being extremely difficult today. um, but yeah, I felt like they could have trimmed some stuff out to make it flow better. But yeah, here was my biggest thing, and that was just the second half. I talked about the first half being kind of fun, and that was the best part was just the first half. I was like, okay, this isn't bad. The second half was rough. My eyes kind of itching. I'm doing a lot of face touching right now. Um, because the second half of the film, I think I need to stop moving so much right now. The second half of the film switches from being switches to kind of being a heavy twist on the New Testament. Whereas the first half you start off on this is a Clarence story. It's a fictional story. You're watching this guy who is has been made up by these writers, and he's a con man, and he's just on this journey of self discovery. That's cool. Then in the second half, it kind of does a twist on the New Testament. And the problem for me was that aside from the tonal imbalance, like I talked about, from going from trying very hard to be funny to being tragic all of a sudden, is that it just takes the story of Jesus and applies it to Clarence. And it only changes a few details, which makes the story less impactful than the existing one. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, doesn't matter. It doesn't this story doesn't have its own identity because it just takes that Jesus story and puts a new coat of paint on it. I guess you could say. It gives Clarence, and I have kind of a list here so I don't get too. It gives Clarence Jesus's persecution, his crucifixion, and his resurrection. It even goes as far as to give Clarence some of Jesus's quotes. With "Forgive them, for they know not what they do" and stuff like that. These are direct things pulled straight off of Jesus. And the problem with that is it doesn't make sense for the character of Clarence. You know, he goes from being completely all for himself, atheist, someone he doesn't believe in anything, and he's entirely selfish. He's just out to make his money, and he just wants to get the girl. And he has deeper reasons for it, and there's interesting stuff you can find. There's some interesting stuff there, but the problem is they took this character who, he has a very strong set. He has very strong character traits in one way, and they take him by the end and they turn him into a believer willing to sacrifice himself for humanity. And it happens within the span of maybe a couple of days, maybe from the time that he originally gets arrested, where he is still just Clarence, being normal Clarence, to all of a sudden he's forgive them for they know not what they do. Um, it doesn't feel earned because of that. There was definitely some social commentary here in there somewhere. But unfortunately, I wasn't really that interested enough to dig any deeper. So it's just for me, it's just the surface level of here you have this character of Clarence who you've crafted, and you have the potential to write this very interesting and unique story. But all they did instead was they took bullet points from Jesus and was like, okay, I'm going to take. I can't even see my hand. I'm over here. I'm looking at my hand. I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to take a little bit of this here. I'm going to take this quote from Jesus. I'm going to take this story beat. I'm going to take this character relationship with his mother. I'm going to take this character interaction with him and while he's carrying the cross. I'm going to take this line from Jesus. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to apply it to my character. And when you do that, it just doesn't feel it. It feels like a cheaper version of an already existing story for one, and then it just doesn't feel earned for the character of Clarence. Big disappointment. Big disappointment. Again, all I wanted them to do was go original. If they would have gone original, and look, keep the first half. I wish they would have done the comedy differently, but that's subjective. Everybody enjoys comedy differently. There are some people who watched it and said it's laugh out loud funny. More power to you. I'm so happy you found it funny. So there's nothing really that I could say to change there. But you take that first half and then just bring it to a natural conclusion instead of just borrowing from the existing story. And the problem is it takes place in the same world as the story it's stealing from. So the implication now is Clarence beat Jesus to the punch. I guess you could say. Kind of one of those things where it's, Jesus died for everyone else, but who died for him? Uh, that's not from the movie. That's me saying that about this movie. Yeah, I just wish they would have done it differently. It feels very cheap the way they ended up pulling it off, and it just felt unearned. And when you switch to that ultra, you know, tragic crucifixion right off the back of people floating around and light bulbs popping over people's heads, and it's supposed to be super funny and lighthearted. Just didn't work for me. So I really rambled on this one longer than I intended to. But yeah, Book of Clarence was last place. It did not work for me on almost any level. The next one is not much better. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I have less to say about the next one, and I talked about this one a little bit. So I'm gonna kind of move through this one a little bit faster, and that is Night Swim, Blumhouse's January horror film. I just mentioned it when Derpy commented about January and February movies. Uh, January is kind of the dumping ground for the horror films that the studios don't care about or don't have faith in. This is that movie. Um, but look, like I said, I'm gonna start with positives, and look, my only positive here is kind of a double edged sword because my only positive for this one is the fact that it's not last. And the only reason it's not last place for me is rewatchability. That's it. It's short, and being that it's a horror film, it's designed to be an easy watch. I didn't hate this movie, but it just didn't do anything for me. So look, that's my positive. Is that it's short and more rewatchable than Clarence. So I'm just gonna move on to the negatives. I hate to do it, but unfortunately, this is just another in a long list of forgettable PG-13 Blumhouse horror films. Um, yeah, it's just, and I actually wrote in my notes here. I'm looking at them right here. It says, I wrote in my notes. It's kind of funny. January has become notorious for being a dumping ground for horror films the studios have no faith in, and as per usual, this one has all the symptoms of being a January horror release. That's what I wrote in my notes for this. So, and I agree with myself from a few days ago. I was absolutely right. Um, it's got a boring plot. I mean, there's nothing super interesting happening with the plot. Forgettable characters, run of the mill scares, and a pretty lackluster third act. I mean, by the end of it, we finished it, and I was like, um, okay, I watched it. Not terrible, but I don't think I'd ever watch it again. And it just falls right into the list of the other films like this. And there's a lot of them. I told you I was going to move through that one quick. Uh, and next up, I already kind of talked about this one too. So let's get right to it. And that is going to be I am reaching that joy. Why does Renee Rapp move her mouth like that while she sings? Anybody else notice that watching this? If you watch this, I am reaching that joy. It's very weird. It's very distracting. Every time she was singing, I was thinking about that. Look, same thing. I'm gonna jump right into the positives on this one. The main, I guess I'll kind of give an overview first because I hate to just jump right in on this. I didn't talk about this one at all, and I wanted to do a video on it. And I probably should have done one, but by the time I got around to sitting to actually make the video, I come on, focus. Me and my camera are gonna have a long talk after this. Focus. Uh, it's never done this. Look, I did an almost 6-hour live stream ranking every film that I watched last year. Never did it. Didn't do it once. And if it did do it once, it was very short and it went away immediately. Annoying. Um, yeah. What was I saying? I started to do a video. That's what I was about to say. I was going to do a video about this one, and by the time I got around to where I was going to sit down and make the video, uh, there were pretty much everybody else. I won't say everybody. Uh, most of the streamers that I like, the reviewers and critics and stuff I like, had already put their videos out, and pretty much all of them said the exact same thing I was gonna say. So, uh, there was I was like, I'll just save it for my ranking. I'll save it for my January video. I guess I'll do a quick overview, which is, it, despite its flaws, and I'm going to talk about its flaws in a bit. I think it's painless, enjoyable film that I had some fun with. It's not even close to the heights of the original, which I just talked about. But it's not the worst sequel either, which I also just talked about. um, and as many times or as many films as I watch in a year, I mean, last year I clocked 105. That's this is kind of welcome to me. Just a quick, fun, enjoyable movie that's just inoffensive. You sit down, you watch it, you have fun with it. It may not be great, but who cares? It was a good time. That's welcome when you watch 105 new releases in a year. Um, yeah, and in terms of positives, I want to talk positives first. I have one major positive for this one, because everything else is pretty much not all of it's a negative, but it's mixed to negative. But I have one positive, and that is the character of Damien. Kind of what I said about the original. Damien and Janice was my favorite duo in the original. They were hilarious every time they were on screen. The character of Damien solo in this one. I wasn't crazy about Janice in this one, but Damien was hilarious. Almost every joke Damien made in this film landed for me, had me laughing pretty good. And every time it cut away from Damien and Janice in this film, I was kind of like, let's get back to you can't see my hands. I keep forgetting you can't see my hand because I'm over here. I was kind of doing this, ready for him to get back on screen. Um, like I said, I wasn't crazy about Janice in this iteration, but Damien played off of her perfectly still. And look, Damien was a great character. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. But like I said, that's really my only positive. Um, this one isn't as bad. That's why it's above the other two. While where I don't have any positives really to say other than the Damien one, and that it's just a fun time. Um, this one is above the other two because I think still it was. I think it's better than the other two. At the end of the day, don't you dare focus on me. There we go. I'm a star. um, yeah, negatives. Essentially, my main one is just it's a carbon copy of the original one. It's a cheaper copy of the original. The plot is the exact same. Most of the jokes, the exact same. The characters, the exact same, and even the lines. There were lines directly lifted from the original for this one. Um, the only thing original here for the film version, obviously, I know there's a Broadway. This is based on a Broadway musical based off of the film that's based off of the book. Um, but the only thing original here for this film is the songs, and obviously, like I said, for the film version. Um, and that just segues right into my first major negative, and that's the songs. One right into the next. At their best, they only serve to distract from the plot. Um, where it's just it they're I mean, I kind of talked to it. Like I said, at their best, they only serve to distract from the plot, and at their worst, they were drawn out, egregious musical versions of quick jokes in the original. Um, I'm looking at you, Animal Song. I don't remember what it was actually called, but you have that quick joke in the original where they're at the mall and she says, "Yeah, this," she's talking about this is kind of like Africa, in the watering hole, and all the kids sitting around the fountain start acting like animals at the watering hole because that's it's kind of and it's a quick joke. It happens and then it's over. In this one, they kind of have the same joke, but instead it happens at school and it's a song version and it goes on for 3 4 minutes of everybody just acting like animals. Not very good. Not very good at all. Um, yeah, that was the worst one. I found myself cringing more often than not at almost every song. Um, besides the animal song, I found them all pretty bad. There's one song. I'll say there's one song that I did enjoy, and from watching other people's reviews, it turns out I'm the only one that actually, for the people that liked the music, the one that I liked is everybody else's least favorite, and that's the song that Karen sings at the school about. I don't remember what it's about. It's the Halloween party song, not the Regina one about getting hurt. It's the other one where she sings and she sings about bad cancer or something like that. I can't remember what it was. It's in my. Let me check real fast. I'm gonna check because that line was pretty funny. I don't know how to just look at mine. How to just see my review. Edit. Oh, curing sexy cancer. That's what it said. I'm gonna cure some sexy cancer. That's a hilarious. That's hilarious. I busted out laughing. Um, yeah, I've been hearing that for the people that liked the songs, that was everybody's least favorite, and that turned out to be my favorite of the songs. Um, yeah, but I still didn't really love it. I didn't like any of the songs, and most of them I did find myself cringing. I think one of the worst ones too is the Regina George song. I already made fun of it at the beginning. Um, it was very bad the first time. Well, I was cringing pretty hard on the first version. The second time they sing, because they sing that one twice. The second time they sing it, it was a little better. There's some better vocal stuff going on that makes the song a little more interesting, but it's still kind of the same thing. I still didn't like it. But I was like, really, this is the one we hear twice? And the math song was really bad too. And I'm pretty sure we heard that one twice too. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure. So yeah, and that leads into my next negative. I guess I said my main negative with the songs. It's not my. This is my main. I'm just gonna keep one up in it. And that is just the characters and the actors. I said now. You know what? I'm not gonna say my main negative because I have one more. I forgot. I do have one more negative, and it's worse than this one. This one's kind of hand in hand with the next one, and that's the characters and the actors. Um, all of the nuance is gone in the remake. In the originals, or in the original, the characters had layers to them. I hate to kind of quote Shrek on this one, but the characters had layers. Um, Characters like Regina George, they were multifaceted. Where one moment she was extremely charming and radiantly likable. That's just Rachel McAdams. She was so likable and charming at some moments, and the very next minute she would turn around and say the most out of pocket thing where you're just like, what did she just say? I'm about to get you. It's like, what did she just say? And there's a couple of those moments in the original. And when she get gets what's coming to her with the bus. I really guess don't want to say that, but because she didn't deserve, but you felt bad for her in the original. You felt bad for her. You didn't want her to get hit by a bus. You just I had the mic turned completely around. I don't know. I was holding it, so I hold this one. This is facing towards me. This is facing away, and I've had it like this for I don't even know how long. So who knows how much you're hearing? Um, I didn't even realize I twisted it. What was I about to say? Yeah, you felt bad for her. I didn't want her watching the original. I didn't want her to get hit by a bus. You don't really like her. Is kind of bittersweet, where I would say it was really just mainly bitter. Because on the one hand, I wouldn't say she necessarily deserved it, but she was kind of getting what's coming to her with just how terrible she had been to everybody. But on the other hand, you see that she's driven by her own insecurities and her own self-esteem issues, and that's what fuels her meanness. Um, she's layered. I mean, the same with the character of Katie. Lohan played her with like an innocence in the original one, where by the time she broke bad, Walter White style, uh, the audience had kind of gone down that journey with her. You'd kind of got sucked in where you're just watching her do these things, and she never does anything terrible to her where she's like trying to kill her. So every time she does one of these little pranks on Regina, it's kind of funny. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's funny. And you're kind of along for the ride. And by the time she realizes she's gone too far, and oh no, I'm basically another Regina George, the audience is like, yeah, we're kind of with you here. We've gone down this road with you. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's nuance to the characters, and you know, in the new one, they completely get rid of the nuance. There is no nuance in the new one. Renee Raps, Regina George. I hope I'm saying her name right. I do this every time on every film I talk about when I name an actress. Who knows if I'm pronouncing their name right? But Renee Raps Regina is completely hateful and unlikable in this new one, where I didn't really care, and when the things that happened, I was just like, yeah, that's kind of justified. She's extremely hateful in this new one, where it's just she's and it's one layered. It's just oh she's mean, she's a brat, she's entitled. That's it. Whereas, like I just said about Rachel McAdams, she was still kind of likable. She was still someone that you could feel sympathy for in the sense where her mom really doesn't. Her mom kind of pays attention to her, but she really doesn't. Her mom's kind of living through Regina, and so she really doesn't have that relationship with her mom, and she's insecure about herself, and you get that with the weight loss stuff, and it's sad, where you can kind of still feel for her, even though she is mean. Whereas this Regina, the new one, or I guess this one, cause I was so on board with the plan where I was like, get yeah, dismantle her because she is so high on herself. It was bad, and yeah, there was no redeeming qualities in this Regina George because there was no nuance. The nuance was gone. The layers were gone, and the same goes with Katie in the new one, where she kind of switching. You're like, oh, you've gone too far. And like I said with Lindsay Lohan, the audience never really felt it until she did. And with this new one, it was like, no, we're kind of with everybody else. You're basically Regina, and that nuance was gone, and so that ruined it for the character side. And this was kind of what I was saying, where I had another one, and it kind of goes hand in hand. Take that same idea with the nuance and go right in with the plot, because the plot has no nuance either. In the original, the events of the plot, they play out organically. Everything escalates at a natural pace, and the characters make logical decisions in the world that Tina Fey created. It's a very heightened reality, of course. It's not realistic whatsoever. Very heightened reality. But within the world they created, everything happens in a natural, organic way. And it makes sense. But in this one, and there's I have a couple of examples. Um the in this one, it's like they had just bullet points of the original film where it was the plots. Okay, Katie starts at school, meets Janice and Damien. They, warn her about Regina, and okay, now she goes at their lunch table. Now they start the plan to get Regina, and then now um, she starts to turn, and then you have this and this and this and then that. Oh, and then you skip. I'm gonna skip forward because I don't want to do that through the whole thing. And oh no, now the book Regina found out, and she dropped the book in the hallway, and someone found it. And she framed Katie for it, and now there's a riot breaking out because of the things that are in the book, and now it's the assembly and all these things. It's like they had the bullet points of the film's plot. Hold up, that one got me. But it's like they had the bullet points, like I just did, and they was just like, all right, let's film it, and we'll just string it together with songs. That's exactly what this feels like. There's no nuance. There's no escalation in the plot. There's no progression. That's a better word. There's no progression in the plot. There's several sequences where the plot just progresses to hit those bullet points that I was talking about. It just progresses on its own, and within the confines of the story, if you don't know what the original one, if you're looking at the story, it doesn't make any sense for these things to happen. And like I told you, I have a couple examples. The student riot, when so she finds out about the weight gaining. Regina George finds out about the candy bar and frames Katie for the hate book, the burn book, and she leaves it in the school. In the new one, or in the original, like I said, the hate book, she drops it in the floor. A student picks it up and they start looking at it, and they turn it in. And as they're looking at it, and they're well, because actually Regina took pictures of everything and posted it everywhere. So there's copies of this everywhere. And so the office has the book that got turned in by the students, but the students outside are looking at these and going, "Hey, this is what they're saying about me," and the students are reading what was said about them, and it's getting more and more. The tensions rising until two characters start fighting, and then that fight includes another one, and then more and more, and the students start fighting, and it becomes this all-out student riot that breaks out. That's the original film. In this one, the riot happens for no reason. Within the context of this story, if you forget the original existed and you're just watching this one, the riot comes out of nowhere because you don't get the build up to it. It doesn't feel natural. It's cutting between where you have Katie and the other girls sitting in the office talking to the principal about the burn book, and it's cutting back and forth between that and the riot that's happening in the hallway. And the whole time I was thinking, hold up a second. Within this story, not thinking about the original, why are they fighting? Why why is there a riot happening? And then later on, I think this is a more egregious example, even though it's a little more subtle. In the original, um, when Katie confesses and they're in the classroom, she's sitting in the class and they come in and they're like, "Hey, your teacher's not here today because it's Tina Fey. Your teacher's not here today because there's deputies checking out her house, and they say basically she's being investigated because they said that she was pushing drugs." And they say that's the original, and then she hears that and she's just like, they're investigating the teacher, and she feels terrible, but she already felt terrible, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And she stands up and goes, "I have to tell you something. I wrote the burn book. I'm coming clean. It's not true. Tell them that they don't have to investigate anymore. I made it up. And that's the reason. In the new one, I actually busted out laughing when it happened because she's sitting in their room and they say, "All right, your teacher is not here, so we're gonna have a sub." And they say, I can't remember the teacher's name, but they say Miss So and So um took a leave of absence, so you're gonna and your sub's not here yet, or whatever they say. And she just sits there and stands up and goes, "It was me that wrote it." And I busted out laughing because in my mind I'm thinking, why? What motivated you right then to confess? In the original, we know it was because he said because the deputies or whatever are standing in the classroom for one, but they're investigating the teacher. They're investigating her because everyone believes she sells drugs. That's why in the original, but why what was the motivating factor to confess right there for Katie in the new one? There wasn't one. But because these plot points, they had these bullet points of the plot that they had to hit. It's like, okay, well, we don't. Let's just hit them. We just got to hit these points. There was no nuance. Just like I said about the characters and taking the layers off of the characters, taking the dynamics out of them. The same thing with the plot, where things just happen because they have to happen, and then there's just songs thrown in between. Um, I'm almost certain. Yeah, this is another thing. I'm kind of looked over at my notes here, and one thing that I said is I'm almost certain that had I not seen the original first, did I if had I not watched the original, this film would have been much lower. This one might have been. I don't think it would have been worse than Clarence, but it probably would have been under Night Swim. It would have been lower because if I hadn't seen the original, but having seen the original and knowing the plot beforehand, I think it made the negatives of this film a lot easier to digest, you know? Because what I just said, where it was just knowing the plot. See, the problem with knowing the original and having seen the original is because I've seen the original, like I just said, I know why these things happen. I know why the riot breaks out. It's because the Regina put copies of the book all over the place and the students are reading it and they're getting more and more agitated and it leads into 1 and 2 fighting and then 2 and 3 and then everybody starts fighting and it's more and more and more till everybody's fighting. I know that in the original she confesses because the cops are investigating the teacher and they're searching her house. So she had to take a day off. I know that. In this one, if I didn't know those things, this the plot wouldn't have made any sense. And I would have seen the riot happen and go, "Why is everybody fighting? Why is there a riot? There's no reason for there to be a riot." Or, "Why did she confess? There was no other than just, it's the right thing to do is confess. There was no motivating factor for her to confess. She just decided randomly, "Oh, I'm gonna stand up in the middle of class and say it." It doesn't make any sense. And like I said, had I not watched the original, this film would have been much lower. But because I have, and I know how the story is supposed to go, my mind fills in the blanks on a lot of those things. It fills in those blanks. So when you're watching it, you can enjoy it. You can just sit back and go, like, "This is fun. I'm having a good time." The songs are terrible, but there's still the jokes are still funny, and the Damien is a blast to watch on screen, and you're seeing all this, and your mind fills in those holes because you know the original. I'm telling you, if I hadn't watched the original, I'd have been much harsher on this film. But as is, I gave it a 6 out of 10 because I still had fun with it. Maybe I'm being too nice, but it is what it is. I'm a nice guy. Second place, number two. That was my little one-handed drum roll. We have Society of the Snow. This film is a really interesting one. I watched this one again, knowing nothing about it. I went into it completely blind. Um, and I told you when I had my last stream, I don't know when it was, and I talked about me doing this video. I said I'm gonna be doing my January ranking, and at the time I only had 4 films. This one was one that I was planning. I said I'll probably have either 5 or 6 when I actually do the ranking because I knew that I wanted to watch this one, and I'm so glad I did. I'm just gonna jump right in with positives. This is gonna be the most positives we've seen so far. um, and first thing I want to say is the acting in this one is all around pretty great. You have a wide range of performances here, you know, that make because there's a lot of characters. There's more characters than what you're seeing right here. There's a wide range of performances, and they all make these characters feel distinct. You have the shy guys, you have the more aggressive personalities, you have the leaders of the group, you have the ones that aren't as motivated or the ones that just want to roll over and let life take its course. You have so many personalities on screen, and I think everybody here did an excellent job bringing it to life. That's my first positive. I wanted to get that one out of the way. Secondly, the cinematography here. Every time I look over, I'm looking at this poster because you're seeing it right here. I got a big one right here beside me. The cinematography here. There are some shots here that are absolutely beautiful. The sweeping landscape, with the haunting amounts of snow and mountaintops and stuff. There's some beautiful, beautiful shots in this film. It's very picture perfect. There are a couple that you could say, okay, that's a wallpaper. That's a wallpaper. That looks good. Um, but also there aren't many action scenes. I don't necessarily would call them action, but they're the high energy scenes. There's not very many of them. There's actually I'm only thinking of 2 right off bat. But when they happen, they're shot in a way that it's such an interesting way where it makes it feel extremely gritty and very visceral. Um, where especially in the case, okay, so there's 2 main ones. I said there's 2 main ones I'm thinking of. The plane crash, everyone knows. I mean, you're seeing it. You can see it. It's not a spoiler. It's a plane crash. Um, the plane crash scene is shot in it's shot in a way that to me when I was watching it, I actually because I watched it on Netflix, and when the scene ended, I actually rewinded it and watched it again because I was like, was that just me, or is that the way they shot and did the sound design? And it was on the plane crash, and it all happens, and the seats start slamming together, and so it felt very much like a Sam Raimi directed scene, not in a comedy horror way, but the way it's especially in the sound design when you're getting close-ups, and I'm not gonna spoil it. I don't want to give away too much about how you know the events look or play out, but you get scenes where the plane crashes and stuff, and it does a lot of where instead of showing the whole thing and all the carnage happening, it's just all the destruction. It takes time where it goes in and it isolates certain things that's happening. It isolates a bone breaking. It isolates something protruding. It isolates these things, and it does it not only in the visual where it zooms in and you see something very specific, but it does it with the sound as well, where all the other sound will drop out and you'll hear the bone snap, and you'll hear something tear. And it when I watched it, I was like, that was very good. I think I'm gonna rewatch that real fast. And I rewound it and watched it again. Really, really well done. And the other, I said there was 2 that I could think of offhand. The avalanche. So I'm not gonna spoil again, but it's snow and it's a mountain, so you can kind of fill in those blanks. But it's shot in a way, and if you watch this film, and I encourage everyone to watch it, that it's shot in a way that it almost goes to like a it's a very weird lens look. They changed the look of everything where instead of being shot normal, it's almost maybe like a GoPro. It kind of fish eyes a little bit as it does it. Really cool. It's really cool. And there's a couple moments and it separates those bits of action. I call it action in quotes because it's not action and like gunplay and fighting and stuff. It's just something happening. So yeah, that was really cool. Really cool. And that was a very good decision on the part of the director to separate the style of filming for those two things. Um and yeah, in terms of another the plot is another positive. It's based on a true story, obviously, but it's truly an inspirational story because it shows how strong humans can be when facing when driven by the will to live. These people, because this is based on a true story, these are real people that really face this, and you see what they were going through and what they were up against and what it was like for them, and to watch them get up every day and go, okay, we need to do this if we're going to survive, not knowing if there's anybody looking for them. They don't know, okay, are we do we have people searching for us? I don't know. Do we have somewhere something close by that we can get to? I don't know. It's just surviving for surviving's sake. And you see how strong the human will is and how or not necessarily how strong, you see how strong that will to live can make us. It's very inspirational. And I was watching this, I was like, this story is very good. This is a very good story. Yeah, absolutely a positive. I did have a couple of negatives, and they're kind of the same thing. I had two negatives, and they're kind of hand in hand. Um, it was too long. I did feel like it was too long. The plot revolves around this group of guys or this group of people um, that are trying day by day to survive, and the way that it's done, it starts to grow pretty repetitive. Where it's like, okay, they wake up, sun up, do some survival task, they have some heartfelt conversation, nighttime. Wake up, do some survival, heartfelt conversation, nighttime. And then there'll be a conflict, and then the conflict will change things, but it'll change things surface level, but essentially it's the same process. Okay, we just had this major conflict, this major setback that's killed a few of us. Wake up, survival things, heartfelt conversation, nighttime. And it repeats this for over 2 hours. And that started to get kind of where it was like, all right, let's trim this up. So it did feel a little too long. And it's not really a negative, but given the subject matter, of these people being trapped, and you're just watching these people slowly die out as they try their best to survive. It's not very rewatchable. And while I commend this film on very many levels, at the end of the day, I don't think I'll ever watch this again. This is one of those movies where you watch it once and you go, good stuff. And that's it. That's it. I'll never be in the mood to rewatch this film. I can say that very confidently. I'm never going to be sitting down and going, I think I'm going to throw Society of the Snow on. I'm feeling a good, survival flick. Um, but yeah, very good movie. Very good movie, and I had to put it on here, and it's definitely getting above the others, but it didn't make my first place because my first place and by process of elimination, I'm sure most of you already know what it is, but that is going to be drum roll. Wait for it. The Beekeeper. If anybody knows what I was just doing, what that's from, you're my favorite person. David Ayer's The Beekeeper. Look, I when this was the second film of the year that I watched, and when I looked at the lineup for what else was coming out this month, I was pretty confident that this was going to be my favorite. And yeah, I mean, this is a Jason Statham action movie. I mean, with David Ayer directing. David Ayer has done. Um, Everybody remembers him for Suicide Squad, and I hate it for him. I wish he could just kind of wash his hands of Suicide Squad. Despite anything, maybe his cut is great. I don't know. I heard ideas for his cut, and when I heard him, I was like, I still really don't like the implications of the way yours sounds. But I'm sure it is better. I know for a fact it's better than what we got. But either way, I'd love to see it. But I wish he would just leave it behind him. I wish people would let him leave it behind. Because he's a great director. He's a great writer. Look, he's wrote movies that people have in their top tens. Training Day is written by David Ayer. He directed Fury, which is, in my opinion, one of my favorite war movies of all time. If OG Tell You Daddy was still in here, he'd say the same thing. Fury is one of his favorite movies of all time. David Ayer is a fantastic director, and I wish people would recognize him for more than just Suicide Squad. And Beekeeper, I think, did a lot for him in that, because here for the last little bit, this has been the talk around David Ayer, has been this movie. Or I guess I gotta go this way. It's this way for me. It's this way for y'all. This way. There we go. I'm directionally challenged. um, yeah, and starting with positives, Jason Statham is my main positive here. I mean, he is one of the action heroes of our time. And that's not the Morbius meme where everybody was this is one of the films of all time. That he Because we don't have very many action heroes here. I mean, we hear people all the time talk about, do we have any movie stars left? And Tom Cruise. Uh, I mean, that's he's really one of the last real movie stars. And in my opinion, in terms of our what we have today, you look at like the '80s where you had the action heroes of the '80s, where you had Stallone and Van Damme and Schwarzenegger, and you just had it was these monumental figures in the action genre. They were the action heroes. And you look at today, and who do we have? We have Jason Statham, Keanu Reeves, maybe. Um, I don't know if you'd call Keanu Reeves. I mean, I think he deserves it, but I don't know what everybody else would say. I'd say Keanu Reeves. Um, but I mean, who else? I mean, that's kind of really it. And so Jason Statham, he's one that he does a lot of just schlocky, dumb action movies. But every time he does them, I'm gonna watch it because he is one of the last action heroes that we have. Um, and he's in top form here. He's killing it here. The next positive is David Ayer's direction. He has just a cool, just this gritty style of the way he directs action that just serves Statham perfectly. I mean, Statham is killing it in this film. And I guess I kind of really need to talk a little bit. I kind of summarize. I don't think I did this for the last one either. Um, so the Beekeeper is about Jason Statham, who is a retired specialist. It's a very derivative story. He's a retired specialist who gets pulled back in on a revenge mission, to take out the people who have hurt the people he loves. It's a very blanket way of saying it. and he's a part of this organization called the Beekeepers that exist outside of the law, and they're there to, make sure things operate the way they're supposed to. Um, like a very derivative story. This isn't something new. This isn't reinventing the wheel here. Um, but so yeah, and that's kind of the basic plot, and on surface level, yeah, it is kind of we'll talk more about that later. But one of the main things, the reason I wanted to kind of talk about what this film was is because one of my positives is that this film just knows exactly what it is. It's a dumb, fun action movie. And it doesn't try to take itself too seriously. It moves quickly. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, and it just focuses on its strengths. Um, and one of those strengths is the humor. I think, there's this thread of comedy that kind of follows throughout the whole film that just kept the smile on my face the whole time. Even when there wasn't action happening, I was still kind of smiling because it was just like, okay, this is kind of funny. There's just this little thread of humor. Um, and the bee humor, the bee puns were glorious. The bee puns alone put this film at number one. To be or not to be is probably my favorite quote of the year. I'll be surprised if that doesn't make my top 10 2024 movie quotes if I was to do something like that. To be or not to be is hilarious. And it's just does that. And then there's also like this dark situational humor throughout the whole thing with uh, there's one with some fingers that decide to not be connected anymore. There's some funny stuff with that. There's funny stuff regarding that same character with the truck. There's just a lot of stuff like that, and the film knows what it is, and so that's one of my main things. It's not perfect by any means. I gave it a 7 out of 10, so it's not perfect. And my number one, I keep saying number one. I need to stop saying that. But yeah, this is my number one. Okay, so I was right. My number one negative is the pacing. Um, I said earlier, I remember I said, it's dumb fun action movie. It's quick. That is partially a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. I complimented the quickness of the plot, and it's a double edged sword. Because I appreciate a fast movie. I've already talked about it. That's why Night Swim isn't last, just because it's more rewatchable in that it's not super long. It doesn't feel like a drag to get through. I can just breeze through it. I don't think it's good by any means, but I can breeze through it. And so I appreciate a fast movie, but sometimes this movie, it just moves at a pace that it just doesn't allow the plot to breathe. The rate of progression goes so high, so fast in this film that it makes the film it feels like the film goes too far. And I'll talk about that in a second too, because that's my next negative. But it also feels super choppy, as if it feels as if there was a lot. What was I about to say? I was about to say something. Oh yeah, it feels like it's super choppy. As if there was a lot of the plot was cut just to focus more on the action and make it feel super fast. Um, to me, it can work where you cut out a lot of the fluff and you just make it very streamlined. That can work, and sometimes that's a very good thing. But here, I think it just felt jarring. There are scenes in the film, and I'll talk about one in particular, where it feels like huge sections of the scene were just left on the cutting room floor. Um, the main one for me was the main one I've talked about since is that for me it goes there's one scene where after a certain explosion in the film, I'm not spoiling anything, but after a certain explosion happens with this call center, some characters are dispatched to hunt Statham, and they're looking for him, and they don't know where he's at. They don't know who he is, and so they say, "Okay, just we're just gonna retroactively figure him out." And they have a list of places to go, and they stop at one, and it's the right place, but they look at it, and they're sitting there, and these characters they go, "Hmm, all right, who lives here?" And they sit and talk about it, and he goes, this is I don't think this is it. This is a waste of time. Let's move on." Right after this, they pull up, it shows them driving, and they see Jason Statham's truck driving. And so they turn and they pull up and then they pull right up on his bees because it says, beekeeper is his organization, but he's an actual beekeeper by trade. And they see his bees and they shoot the bees for some reason. For some reason. And it cuts and it shows Statham kind of home aloneing for a second. And then it cuts and the characters are there. And they're already there where Statham's at. And then you get your action scene. And I don't think I described it. I'm trying to do it in a way that I don't spoil anything, but so I didn't describe it exactly to portray my point, which is that it just flies through it. Where 1 second they're like, this is a waste of time. The next they see him, the next they're on him. And realistically, we should have seen these events kind of like what I was just saying with Mean Girls, where that we needed to see the nuance, we needed to see the progression of the plot play out instead of them just hitting bullet points. This film feels like they had that progression and they just cut it out. That's what it feels like to me, where it's just like, okay, we just had this action scene, we have this one coming up, but there's too much time in between. We need to cut all the fluff out of the middle. And so they was just like, okay, let's just cut this, and this. And it just shows. So instead of a line of the characters getting to where they need to go, it's like dots because they're skipping. And that's what it felt like. I made the joke to my brother. It felt like we were watching on DVD and it was skipping on the DVD. It would just skip forward. And that's what it felt like because it just does that. And I don't know if I had another example listed on here, but it does that through the whole film where Statham is in one space and he learns that he has to get somewhere else. It's like, okay, I have to go somewhere. And then it cuts and he's there. And that's okay in some aspects, but you see what I'm saying? Am I making sense? And another thing too, you look there's this character. Like I said, I think it helps sometimes to remove that type of stuff, but I think it negatively impacted this film. Where sometimes it works, and this one I don't think it did. It also hurts in case of some characters. Specifically, there's one character, and I forgot I see it listed here. There's one character, it's a fellow beekeeper. Okay, so it's someone else in his organization, and they send her, and they're like, all right, we want you to go get him. And so and you see this in the trailer, and when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, we're gonna be getting a schlocky film. This is good stuff. I hope we get an over the top action film. And we did for the most part, but you see her and it's like, okay, they're like, all right, we're gonna dispatch this beekeeper, and everybody's talking to like, oh man, you know, are we really sending her out there? She's too, you know, eccentric. She's too eccentric, and they really build it up. It's like, okay, this is gonna be some good stuff. And she's introduced, they talk about her, and then you get the scene, and you see it in the trailer where she shows up to where Jason Statham's at. She's just there. First off, I don't know how she found him, how she knew pinpoint location where he was at, but she pulls up right beside him at a gas station. They have their altercation, and that's it. She's gone. And when it happened, I was sitting there thinking, that's it? Are we done? That was all she had? they built her up for more time than she was actually on screen. Um, and it's stuff like that. It feels like there was stuff cut. It feels like a lot of this film was cut out. Um, this film easily could have been 15 or 20 minutes longer. And I think, come on, camera. There we are. Bring me back into focus. But yeah, this film could have easily been 15 or 20 minutes longer. Easily. But as is, it just it feels extremely choppy. Um, Another side effect of that problem, what I was saying, is the teleporting thing. He just appears where he needs to be. They say he finds out, okay, I need to be here, and he's there. And part of the fun of these types of films is seeing the protagonist have to overcome the obstacles of getting around discreetly because everyone's after him. The police are after him, the his agency's after him, the there are other agencies after him, the criminals are after him. Everybody is hunting him down. And so part of the fun is having to see how does he overcome the plot of getting where he needs to be with everyone hunting him down. And in this one, because it's so choppy and it feels like they cut all these things out, it removes that element of fun that we could have had. That element of tension of, oh, how is he going to get there? It's crawling with people looking for him. How is he going to get from A to B? But instead, it feels like they cut the in between out, and he just teleports from A to B. And it happens several times. Pretty much the whole plot is that every time they go to a new location, we don't see how he gets there. He's just there. Um, and yeah, and so yeah, it just removes that layer. I was trying to think. I was trying to think if I had. It seemed like I had something else to say on that topic before I moved on to the next one. So I have one more negative. Oh yeah. Well, this is a separate negative. I'm going to add this one. It's not in my note. I just remember this one. Also, the detective plot, the side where you have the two detectives that are hunting him down. I did not like that plot line at all. I think you could have cut their plot line and focused on the stuff that I just said felt like it was missing, like just seeing Statham have to adapt to his new environment. Um, I would have preferred cut the detective stuff and see that because pretty much the whole idea for these detectives is that they serve to just tell the audience what's going on. That's it. Where because that's all they do. You have these characters that they are figuring things out and they just tell it. And then they get to the next spot and they figure out and then they tell it. I did not like that at all. Every time it cut to the detectives, I was thinking, okay, let's move off of these characters. Let's get back to Statham. And there's just I talked about the humor being great, where there's just this dark comedy throughout, and the B puns are just perfect, and Statham is funny in his own way, and there's just and Josh Hutcherson's in this, and he's funny. Jeremy Irons is funny. The detective character, I she's supposed to be funny. She's one of those kind of like what I was saying with the Book of Clarence, where it feels like they're trying to be funny. She was the only character in this where I was like, well, her and her partner. It's like every time it gets their type of humor, it was just like, wow, I feel like we're trying to be funny here. And I just wish it wouldn't have. Um, yeah, and then my last negative, is just that it to me, I mentioned it earlier, it just goes too far. Being that it's a dumb action movie that harkens kind of back to the golden age of action, like the 80s stuff that I was just talking about. I expected it to get crazy, but I didn't expect it to get quite as bombastic as it did. And me and Snorkeling with Dad, who's an alumni on the channel, we were just talking about this the other day on a live stream where we was just kind of laughing about it going because anytime the threat of the film starts to involve, you know, the president or the White House, it starts to get a little beyond disbelief where it's like he's going after the president. It's like that's a little far fetched. It should have just been. It was a decent twist where it's like there is a twist in the film, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, but it goes a little too far, and it stretches a little bit. I wish they would have dialed it back in multiple different areas, but as is, I still had a blast with this movie. The action is on point, the comedy is great in most for the most part, and just with a few tweaks, this film could have been really something special. As is, I still really love it. It's not my favorite of Air, especially not with Fury on the table, but it's definitely better than Suicide Squad. So yeah, this was my number one for the month. So that's it. That is everything I watched. So real quick, I just want to do a quick. So that's five new releases. I want to see how many films on here I did watch, just out of curiosity. Let me. I'm gonna pull this up. Can't see what I'm doing. But all right, we had. I'm not gonna count the shows. I won't count the shows. That's different. So we had one, four, five, six Batman films, or in the universe of Batman. One Evil Dead Rise. Three Mission Impossibles. Let's see how many horror films we had for the first time. One, two, three, four, five horror films that were new watches, first time watches for me, not new releases. That's four miscellaneous new films. Let's see. And then new releases, it would be plus the five. 30 films. So I pretty much watched a film a day. Not too shabby. And then that's not including the series because I watched Hill House, Royal Pains. I've been watching Smallville like crazy. And then the Batman from 2004 and then Death Note. Um so those, but that's not including because these were first time series. Other than Smallville, that's the only one that I've kind of already seen in the past. Um, but I put it on here because it's kind of like a first time watch because I don't remember a lot of it. Um, so it basically feels like I'm watching it for the first time. Hold up, I got to do this because I don't like. There we go. I don't like taking up the whole screen. I like having a little bit of a border. Um, what was I about to say? Yeah. So you had those, but also there are other shows that I watch that are kind of like I said, Batman the animated series that are just comfort shows that I'll turn on. So if I was being honest, you could throw that in there. You could throw Psych in there. I'm always watching Psych. You could throw some Monk in there. I really like Monk a lot. And so there's a lot of stuff you could actually tack on if you wanted to do rewatches of shows that I've already seen. But I didn't want to do all that because then I'd be really just adding fluff to my list. So as is 30 first time. No, it wasn't 30 first time. What was it? It was 20. Let's see, one, four, six. Okay, so it was 25. No, 20. 21. Sorry. Head math is it's 1 o'clock in the morning. My math is a little goofy. Um so 21 first time watches for me in terms of just films. And then so I was right the first time. It's 25. Come on with it. Why you there we go. So we'll just stick with 21. 21 first time film watches for me this month. That's crazy. And then some rewatches too in there, clocking me out at what did I say it was 30? Clocking me in at 30 films watched this month. 31st time or 30 watches, yeah, and 20 of them were first times. So, pretty successful month. I'm gonna be doing this type of video every month this year. I wanna try it. On YouTube, that's in my description. On Twitch, there is no description, so but yeah, that's something that I wanna start doing. This is gonna it's not really a series, I guess, but it kind of where I'm gonna do my monthly recaps on everything I watch. Um, so it'll include I probably won't include stuff like that's continuing. So like I probably won't I'm not gonna put Death Note on February's series list because I started it in January and I almost finished it in January. Smallville, I doubt I'm done with Smallville by the end of February. I strongly doubt it. I'm halfway on Smallville. Um, so I'm not gonna be done with it. But I'm not gonna put it on the next one. You see what I'm saying? I listed it here, and so I don't want to just keep repeating the same things. Oh, I watched Smallville, and so all right, hey, I finished Death Note. I'm not gonna do that. So definitely on the watch list in terms of series this month. It is definitely one of the Flanagan ones. Whether I do Bly Manor or House of Usher, Midnight Club, or Mass. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see. And then yeah, just new releases in the theater, and then whatever films on my watch list that I actually get to look forward to on February. And yeah, this is something I want to do every month. So there'll be 12 of these. Maybe. I don't know if I want to do December. I'll do 12 of them. We'll say I'll do 12 of these, and then because then I'll have my year ranking that I'll do in January. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing this every month. So I originally was going to do this Wednesday, and then I said, you know what? I was writing my notes and stuff because technically Wednesday was the last day of the month. I was going to do it, and I was getting my notes together and stuff for the stuff that I wanted to talk about, the getting my list of films that I watched together. I think I got everything. I don't know if I didn't track it throughout the month. This is Wednesday. I sat down and said, okay, what all did I watch this month? So I could have missed something, and I probably did miss something, but um, I think I got everything. Um, but yeah, it was gonna be Wednesday, and then I said, "Oh no, I'll do it Thursday," and then I ended up catching Argyle last night, so it's my first February movie, and I figure tomorrow I'll jump on here and do a quick video on Argyle and just just a normal review, a solo review of Argyle because I have some stuff I'd like to say about it, and I don't think I want to wait to the end of the month like I did with this one. Um, and I'll be picking films like that sparingly throughout the year, where I'm not going to do that with every film, because I couldn't have done a whole video for Night Swim. I don't have enough to say about Night Swim. I probably could have got a whole video out about Clarence, but I wasn't very motivated to do Clarence. So, um, and so I was gonna do one for Beekeeper, but it was gonna be a joint review where I was bringing in snorkeling. That still might happen. We'll see what he decides. Um, but yeah, so look forward to this every month. Some other things. Obviously, the game stream is still popping off. There's been a lot of I got some messages I haven't looked at. I've been on here. I've been letting my social life fall by the wayside. That's a lie. I have no social life. That if that was a meme, it would have been one of those where it says something and then parentheses it contradicts itself. That's exactly what I just did. Um, yeah, the game stream has been popping off. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out on the game side on Twitch, where I'm streaming Lethal Company a lot, and we always have a very full squad. It's modded, so um, I think at one point we got up to 7 or 8 people the other night, and it was pure chaos. Um, So stuff like that. A Grounded Texas Chainsaw was one of the recent ones. So if you're a fan of games and you like watching game streams, check me out over on Twitch where I do that. I'm going to be posting. I've debated doing a second channel on YouTube to do the games, or maybe just setting up my own playlist that keeps the game separate from this stuff because this is kind of the YouTube thing. Um, we'll see because I have some of the other ones that I want to post and put those up live. So we'll see. Like the Telltale series is the my Batman Telltale series. I definitely want to get uploaded. So whether I do it on a new channel or on this one, I don't know yet. So just stay tuned. And yeah, look forward to the other stuff that's going to be coming. I talked about a lot of stuff. My schedule is just going to be absolutely wild. I actually went through and looked at all of my not only my rankings and reviews or like my monthly rankings like this, but I went through and looked at my other ones that I'm planning, and I have 3 planned for this month. 3. So, we'll see. Be on the lookout for that. There are gonna be at least 3 rankings coming out on the YouTube channel for the month of February, and I'd like to do some other stuff on YouTube too. So that's just 3 rankings, and then it just gets busier as we go. So yeah, if you're on Twitch and you're not subscribed to the YouTube, definitely go subscribe over there because there's about to be some YouTube exclusive content that I'm going to be dropping that is going to be related to movie stuff, especially considering when the shows get fired up. Because those of you who don't know, focus, focus. I'm telling you, I'm gonna kill this camera. I'm gonna kill this camera, bro. There we go. And you heard me. Um, I have for those of you who don't know, and this is kind of separate. I was about to sign off, but I want to say this real fast. And I always do this. I always ramble at the end. One of these days, I'll be able to dial it in. But what I wanted to say was, I had originally, and if you go to my YouTube right now, you'll find a lot of old streams. I've been actually going through and kind of polishing up the channel and looking at old streams. I have stuff from 2021 all over my YouTube and everything, and a lot of the problems that I ran into then with quality issues and technical issues, which tonight I've been having them with this camera. But then it was glitchy streams and all kinds of stuff. I had a lot of problems then, some copyright issues that I didn't know about that I had to go back and kind of fix. Um, but I had 2 shows running back then. You had the Ding Nation podcast, which was myself and a special guest. And for a time, I was doing it every Thursday. There were 4 consecutive Thursdays. And then I ended up having some traveling and stuff that I did, and it kind of put the show on hold. But the first episode I did back in, I think it was November. I did my first episode back with the Ding Nation podcast talking about Five Nights at Freddy's with Snorkeling with Dad. And that's called the Ding Nation podcast. That is about to be firing back up. I've been working on getting some guests, whether they're regulars or a cycle. I've been working on a list of people that I can cycle out and bring in and talk about some stuff. I've got some fun ideas planned. Um, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to get that show back up and running. Also, I had a second show that I was doing on here, and that one was every Monday night, and it was called Memoirs of an Aspiring Filmmaker. And basically, I got on here and talked movies, but I wasn't talking about other people's. Well, I was less talking about other people's stuff, and I was more talking about my movie making journey. Because those of you who don't know, who don't have me on any social media, I am a filmmaker myself. I've made some short films, I've made a feature film, and I've written a few screenplays, and I'm working on getting a project in motion as we speak. And so I had that show that was about just kind of me talking about my passions in film, whether I was talking about a specific director. I remember doing Nolan, a Christopher Nolan video where I talked about the way he's inspired me. I talked about his shots and the way he does his camera and how he approaches scope and scale and spectacle and all that. I remember talking about I actually did talk about my short films on here, and we watched some of my short films on here. Some of them are not so great. They're great to me, come on, camera, I'm telling you. Me and this camera are gonna have a long talk. We're gonna have a long talk. Focus! What are you doing? There. Telling you. Uh, what was I saying? I had one where we was doing my short films. I had another one where I was talking about action scenes and fight scenes, and I broke down some of my favorite action scenes and what I love about them and stuff. Unfortunately, I think 2 out of 3 of those that I just mentioned were copyrighted and taken down, and I didn't know it until here recently when I've been kind of more active on YouTube. And so I've been kinda working on those and editing those. So those are the quality on those are bad. I was rewatching and some of it was like, "Ugh, this is rough." But I can't help but love it. I look back and I start watching, I'm like, "Wow, this is just a kid who is absolutely inspired by film, and that has done nothing but grow ever since." And I'm so much closer now to living that dream than I was then. And so going back and watching that is very inspiring. And so if that's something that interests you, definitely check that out. It's on the YouTube. But I plan on bringing that show back. I talked about it again. My guest snorkeling with Dad. He is a fellow filmmaker and a fellow writer. More in particular, he's a fantastic writer. And I've talked about getting him on here and doing a live stream where we write on stream and we brainstorm and come up with a story from scratch right here on stream as an episode of memoirs. I don't know. I'm working on a ton of stuff like that for the future, as well as some other things. And I just can't wait. I can't wait to bring that one back. Ding Nation's coming back. Memoirs is going to be coming back in some capacity. Um, I don't know if that's going to be a weekly. I'd like to get Ding Nation back up weekly. I don't know if I can get Memoirs weekly yet. We'll see. But Ding Nation is an absolute weekly thing that I want to get it back up. And also, there's a third show that I haven't talked about yet because I was kind of waiting, but I'll kind of tease it here. Me and my good friend and brother and channel alumni, OG Tell You Daddy, everybody knows him, um, are working on getting our own show up and running that is going to be absolutely chaotic and crazy. Who knows? We did a little taste of it on a live stream that got completely taken down by YouTube. YouTube shot it down so fast. So we're gonna have to find some workarounds to get it up on YouTube. But but so yeah, we're gonna have to work around that. But that show is going it's in the prototype stage where we've worked on some concepts, we have some ideas, and we're just waiting to bring them to life. So I can't wait for that one too. If I can get that one up and running as well, that will be 3 shows in addition to all of these planned videos and rankings that I already have. That's in addition to some individual reviews that I want to do, like the Argyle review or some of these other films, like my most anticipated list. I'll probably be reviewing all of those. And so if you are a fan of anything that I just said, even if you're not, but you're curious, check me out on YouTube. Go to the YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, welcome. I'd like it. I I urge you to like and subscribe and hit that bell because there's some crazy stuff coming down the pipeline. If you're on Twitch, my YouTube link is in my on my profile. Just click it. It'll take you right there. You don't even have to search anything. And you can see the old ones that I was just talking about that aren't very good quality, but I couldn't bring myself to delete them because there's just too much. I got too much nostalgia and passion, or too much nostalgia and warmth out of watching the passion that I used to have and that I still have. That's just grown um, since then. So that stuff is still there. If you want to check out any of that, definitely head over to my YouTube. But yeah, that is going to conclude today's video. Be looking for Argyle's review tomorrow. Hopefully, I'd like to get that out tomorrow. Even if I don't get to do a full video like this, it'll probably be like a short that I'll do to YouTube Shorts and TikTok or something like that. So definitely be on the lookout for those or for that, and then watch out for these game streams because they're gonna get you. They've already got me. So, all right, that's gonna do it for me. I appreciate everyone who's watching now or in the future, and I already know the deal. Stay sweet, and if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.